Well, hey, welcome back, everybody. Some people are still coming back on, so we will admit them as they arrive. So, on the second half of the session here, we're going to start out. Again, the theme is creating value for sponsors. What can you do to add value? Well, one of the things that I found very useful is getting on podcasts. I've been on the Dirt Life Show with George Hamill. I've been on Racers and Rental Cars with Cameron Foray and Don O'Neill. And today we're going to have a couple of these guys talk about creating value for sponsors through podcasts. George is one of the co-hosts of the entire summit. He's been helping Megan and I behind the scenes doing all the tech. Without George, none of this would be happening. He's amazing. But he also runs a podcast and is very successful. And he's going to tell us now how he does it and how to use podcasts to create value. I'm going to hand this over to George. Tammy, you're going to show me how real quick. Oh, no, I just switched cameras. Ha! I'm learning. So I'm doing George's job right now. Oop, that didn't work. How's that? There it is.
There we go.
George Hamill.
Great
You're
job.
on.
Director Alex over there. Well, thank you. Yeah, so we've been talking about value quite a bit this whole summit. And value, I think it has different meanings. And social media, we just talked with Rich Hausman and Megan, obviously, about the social media stuff. I think that aligns a lot with how podcasts have changed. And Don O'Neill with, excuse me, Racers and Rental Cars will be able to confirm this as well. But going on podcasts, I think, expands your reach a little bit and allows you to be able to be a little bit more real when you talk with people about potential audience gains and sponsorships. And what I mean by that is you have more time to be able to communicate with people. On social media, a lot of times when you're doing communication, you're looking for likes and you're looking for interactions and stuff like what Rich was saying. But a lot of that is talking at people. The key word is at people. And when you talk on a podcast, you can talk with people and you can engage with them and you can associate with them and you can ask questions back and forth. And I think that creates a lot of value because a lot of us all have the same questions and comments and different interests that we can talk about. And it's not just a surface level thing like social media. So, Don, I would like to hear what you have to say as well.
Well, thanks, George. Actually, we started a podcast based off of the fact that it was an education piece. Not so much that we were interested in creating more value for Cameron's top fuel driver, more well-known because of Race Pack in his past. Myself, we're both marketers. We both have backgrounds in marketing, and we were just at the point where, in a way, honestly, tired of seeing people do it wrong and just wanted to take time out. And we did a show and we had executives on and subject matter experts within the motorsports world. And then it spiraled. That's when it spiraled into the point of, okay, now we have companies like Manscaped and CBD MD reaching out to us and saying, hey, look, you guys have got great metrics. We're very personable. We're not for everyone. And that's when we started realizing that more companies and more people wanted to be on board with the pod and not our racing organizations, not our racing program. And Cameron and I had to basically split the way we did our contracts and agreements and deliverables with those companies, because we realized at that point, hey, we have people that want to use discount codes, have the likes, have the comments, get the feedback, as you were talking in regards to the social media aspect, but it also became more personal. And that was the thing about podcasting that kind of caught me off guard when we started, was like to go through an airport and someone up and go, hey, I recognize you from, they're a racer or whatever, they're a dirt track person or whatever the case was. They listened to the show. It was very fulfilling and completely surprising. So yeah, I think if you're going to try to make a podcast, I will tell you some of the challenges with it. obviously equipment, technology, and that the space is overrun with podcasting. That's the challenge. What are the opportunities? The opportunities are wide open. If you're a personable person and can sit down, and even if it's a monthly basis, and be in the segment, you will reach people and they will start to reach back out to you. And then you create that customer conversion of more of establishing rapport. And now you have something that you can show companies, and that it's not just the on track piece. With the way the economic structure is moving in motorsports, the on track piece and delivering more ROI opportunities is going to be significant, especially in, I would venture to say, forecasting probably the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to be huge that the technology piece is going to provide more of an ROI side.
I can agree with that 100%. And I think a lot of the people that are watching the summit will probably agree with being able to get on podcasts. Sometimes it's difficult for you guys to get on podcasts. Sometimes you may not know what to talk about, or sometimes you will relate to some things that we've talked about in the past. But all of that is where the interaction and engagement comes from. And you can follow it up with social media stuff too. So let's just go through a couple examples that we've seen in the past. Like, we have some consistent guests. One of them, I think, is actually watching the summit now. He's a young man named Caden Danbury, and we're going to use him as an example because he reaches out to be on the Dirt Life show as much as he possibly can. He does it for a few reasons. He does it for one main reason is because he can associate himself along with other top guests that we have. Let's just say it's a top off-road racer, Rob McCachran or somebody. He can associate, he can come co-host the show, he can do different things. So he's now in those social media posts sharing information with those top level drivers, growing his audience, getting recognized, and now he can genuinely show his personality, share his story, something that he didn't get to do at the races because he was so busy, something that he may not have been able to do online or on social media through Instagram because he didn't have enough time. And it really, really elevates the growth of his potential sponsorship and notoriety because he's allowing himself to be in those places. And without the podcast, that stuff, those interactions wouldn't happen. So, Don, do you have some examples that are similar to that?
A lot of the, I want to say, roster of people that we've had on have really been from the educational standpoint. Our show, we don't really do race recaps. That's the, there's a lot of different forms of motorsports that do race recaps and so forth. When I'm thinking about Flow Racing and some Speed Sport Network and so forth, there's other platforms. They do race recaps and we don't. So atypically, if a racer comes onto our show, it's because they're doing something in the motorsports marketing world. We've had Megan on the show. Alex obviously has been on our show in the past. If you were a Coca-Cola person, we've had numerous Coca-Cola executives on our show to talk about what it is, the education piece, right? Having Rich on the show from Hook It, he'd be somebody great to have on our show to talk about valuation and deliverables and the things that matter to companies. I think a lot of times in motorsports, we get blinded by the fact we want to drive race cars. That's what we want to do, right? We want to drive. But early on in my grad school in marketing and within the Army, I realized it has nothing whatsoever to do about racing. It has to do with the bottom line. 9 times out of 10, most people don't care about what the racing is. They want to know what you're doing for them to help their marketing team as an asset to increase sales on their P&L sheet. That's it at the end of the day. They want you to make their life easier. And so we really we've had luck with some younger kids that we've had executives like they've reached out to ask about them, junior dragster kids and so forth in their education process. With companies wanting kind of a vote, if you will, or, what do you think about them? Do they have the potential? And I know as a driver, it's tough. You want to race, but you got to do the business side of it. So, Evelyn, the podcast name is Racers in Rental Cars because Cam and myself neither one of us own the race cars that we drive. We drive for people. And so it became a very easy podcast name, as Racers and Rental Cars.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think a lot of the audience that's watching is it's difficult for them to understand sometimes on how to be your own PR agent and get out there and get yourself on podcasts. But you can always reach out to people that that host their own podcast, something that you think would be interesting. And I strongly suggest that don't do it just endemically inside the motorsports world. Like, let's just say you are an off-road racer and you want to get on the Dirt Life show. Maybe there's not a spot available in the next month when you're available. Go reach out to other places that are not off-road racing and talk about your story and share those things. But always try to see if you can give yourself the opportunity to connect a storyline when you're sharing it. So maybe something that you've gone through in life. One of the most interesting podcasts that we had was with a girl named Bella Burchard. And Shelby Anderson did the same thing. Brooke Jensen did the same thing. They all talked about their struggles with illnesses like diabetes or Lyme disease and things like that. And those were very, very attracting to a lot of people that were in their genre of motorsport because they had similar issues. And so there was a big connection. And then we noticed that they had all of a sudden new fans and they were able to grow because they were able to make those connections. And those things are very important because that's sharing real world stories that most of the time you wouldn't be able to interact with or share at the races. So it's growing your audience and it's really making a strong connection, especially for the future growth of your program. So
Oh,
go ahead, Don.
no, I got to jump in. Absolutely. That is, you know, one of the big things that Cam and I both benefited from, right? Cam's a college professor now and he's young husband with a wife and kids, having kids, trying to race, trying to market, trying to run a podcast. He had that, right? For myself, my late wife had MS and cancer is what took her life. And so there was a lot of hospital ICU room nights that we recorded podcasts from a hospital, and it became very endearing with a lot of people, and they communicated back that their loved ones. Right before I called Megan earlier while I was driving, I was on the phone with another racer. His wife just found out that she's got cancer, and it's the first thing. I mean, for someone to reach out to you and want to share and need feedback or an interaction piece, you want them to make you human. I think that's the biggest thing that I can tell people. Being humble and being human, but still being a business person works. And if you don't understand when I say that it works, you shouldn't have to try hard. Your passion and commitment to people, affection, sincerity, that's not fake. It should be real. And I think podcasts allow that to show.
100%. I couldn't agree more with that statement. And that's one of the big questions or big statements or notes that I wanted to bring up is when you are on a podcast, it gives you the chance to be as real as possible, right? Because on social media, everything is, and I don't want to say jaded because that's a strong word, but it's taken in a different context. When people can connect with you, when you're speaking with them and you're genuinely you can have a much stronger understanding of who that person actually is. And once again, I'll say it, nobody really knows you when they see you at the racetrack. They just know you as a racer at the racetrack. So when you give them a little bit of an open door to your life, it's very, very valuable. And if there's ways that you can share that through other channels, like more popular racers than yourself, through those podcast channels, and then relay that back to your sponsors or your partners or your potential new sponsors, it's almost priceless because then they get a real understanding of who you are and you don't necessarily have to go meet them. They can understand who you are directly through that video or podcast. And then when you do go meet them, you can shake their hand and they have a little bit better grasp of who you are.
I would totally agree with that. To be able to, you have to paint a picture, right? You made mention about being your own PR person. And I know Megan's on here and I see Chris Bishop and so forth. And I'm sure they're fully aware. I stirred the pot at NHRA and in the quote unquote sportsman racing world back before the holidays because I get tired And I have no problem making this argument with anyone because it's a matter of perspective. I get tired of the term sportsman racer. Nobody refers to the Camping World Series guys as sportsman NASCAR racers or NASCAR Sportsman Series. Everybody gets their due, but somehow or another in the drag racing world, we're all supposed to have this sportsman label. And again, it has to do with being your own PR person and going through the process. All it takes you to do is get one significant executive who takes time to tell you how they evaluated your packet and the verbiage that the racing associations use. And you can take a podcast platform and you can start the change. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? Absolutely not. It's like being in the federal government. It's probably not going to happen. But if you don't make noise about what it is that's impacting you and your company, for your sponsors, and for your livelihood, whether it's passion, personal, or professional, it's never going to change. And a podcast is a great place because guess what? Once the microphone's on and you're talking, as long as you got somebody to produce it, or heck, you can go on Anchor FM and produce your own podcast and put it out there. I'll be honest, the first show that we did for Racers and Rental Cars, when they called 2 weeks later to give the metrics for it, I told them they were full of it. There was no way that many people tuned in to listen to me and Cam talk about motorsports marketing. And they did. And it was mind blowing. So if you don't think that the microphone has some power, you're sadly mistaken. You just got to be willing to throw yourself out there, and you got to take the good and bad, and roll with it. But at the same time, be genuine, be sincere, have some ethics to it. I think you'll go places. Take advantage.
Yeah, and even if you are a little bit timid and you don't want to necessarily share your story or let people get in depth with you, you can also take the approach of helping your other sponsors. So maybe if one of the deliverables that you have in one of your sponsor agreements, like Megan and Alex talked about before, is that you're going to do media appearances, well, offer yourself up to those podcasts, but coordinate it with a sponsor. Let's just use a tire company or a wheel company like KMC, for instance. If you're sponsored by KMC, ask them if they know of any podcasts that you could be on and you could help promote maybe a new product that they have coming up, and you can go on there and showcase that. Maybe it's just a little 5-minute segment, but you're killing two birds with one stone because you're getting your name out there and you're also helping get the product out there for your partners. There's been a lot of times when we've had the opportunity to have people tell their new product stories online through the podcast. Within the next 2 to 4 weeks, that company has increased sales anywhere from 25 to 75%, just depending on what it is. And that wouldn't have happened unless they or one of their athletes reached out to help promote that product through the channels. So you have a lot of availability to be able to go through and offer that up to your potential new partners or current partners as well. So Tammy, I think we have a question.
Yes, somebody was asking, do you think YouTube videos have the same pull that podcasts do? Would it be better to do a little of both or really master one or the other?
Well, we'll let Don answer this as well, but I think it's two separate things. I think the YouTube stuff is more like social media. You can gather engagement, but podcasts will give a lot more in-depth understanding and honesty when you do them. And there's two different types of podcasts in my mind. There's some that are operated live and there's some that are post-produced. So depending on which one you're going to be on, you can establish what you're going to say. And the live ones bring a lot of genuine characteristics out of people because it shows what they are, how they interact with other people, if there's comments coming in and things like that, just like people are doing here on the summit. With a YouTube video, it's all post, right? So even if you did it live and it's posted on YouTube, there can still be feedback, but you can't directly interact with somebody. And it's a lot harder to understand who a person is when you have to look at it afterwards. And the YouTube engagement will be completely different than what a podcast is. A podcast usually is listened to in audio format. So like for the Dirt Life, most of our numbers come from iTunes and audio stuff. The second stuff comes from us posting on Instagram. So a lot of times when athletes or racers or whoever comes, products, businesses come to the Dirt Life and are on the show, they get a significant increase in their small social media from Instagram, but then they also get follow-up questions when people are listening to audio driving down the road or consuming in a different manner. And it's a lengthy conversation that they get connected to instead of just a 10-second story or clip on social media.
Yeah, I would totally. I'll raise my hand. I am not a YouTube person, just not. Okay, and that's me. You want to know what I go to YouTube for? I go to YouTube to find out how to do something that I don't know how to do, or I'm not smart enough to figure out, and I don't want to, don't want to call somebody. I have no problem admitting that, but I'm a racer. I might go there if somebody says, "Hey, so and so had a bad accident," or "So and so gave a great interview." Of course, that ends up on YouTube at some point from a racing association. So I may go see that. I can probably tell you that I'm on YouTube less than maybe one time a week, maybe. Podcasts, on the other hand, they're consistently. I have a library in my phone. I subscribe to multiple ones when it comes to marketing. Right now, the economy, listen to a lot of business podcasts, but to do YouTube, I would tell you that if that's what you are and you enjoy that and you have time to edit and so forth, I think that's the biggest thing, as you alluded to there, George. Post-production of YouTube videos, the editing and so forth. But a lot of times by the time you get done, you've missed your window, right? Or whatever it is that you're talking about in post-production, you've shared in some other social media platform. I remember from PRI listening to Emily Reeves and Alex Taylor talk about during their seminar piece that they edit, and never get the message out. And then they lose interest in it. And so they were more critical of themselves. I think podcasting, even on the post-production side, we try not to cut anything. We just want it to be real so that you have that interaction to go with. But each is to own. Every segment's different. I know George, the dirt life, the circle track guys here in the Midwest, drag racers, everybody's different. Every segment captures differently. So I wouldn't say not to try one or the other, because I think numbers will tell you. You'll find your spot. And that's the thing, is to find your spot, what works for you and what sells for you to companies. What's easy for you? What can you get passionate about? And I think let that derive or direct you on the podcast or YouTube or any other social media platform for that matter.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the session's kind of coming to an end, or our little segment is coming to an end. But I think what best we can give advice for you guys is to make sure that you try to see if you can showcase yourself on a podcast, maybe once a month. Maybe it's the same podcast, maybe it's a different podcast. Give them suggestions on what you want to talk about. Maybe it's getting your sponsors or partners involved and getting yourself out there a little bit more, seeing some of the things that they're doing and following up with those things. Ask them at the podcast if there's anything that you can help with. Also do what Megan and Alex were talking about before. Get a rate card. Understand those analysis and statistics that you can provide back to your partners, and even talk to them about maybe what you've done 2 months ago on a podcast to try to sell some of the wheels that you have on your vehicle and how effective that was, because they'll be very, very appreciative of all of that information once they get that. But don't be scared. Just jump out there, try it, see if you like it, and keep going.
Well, I'll wrap my piece up. Absolutely. I think it's the easiest thing if you start a podcast, and I know Megan's going to talk about it later on, but if you've got product sponsorship deals that you're trying to get more value out of, there is nothing easier to do than a podcast with a discount code that goes back to a URL link that they can input right there on the site. Tony Yorkman's going to be on a little while. K&N was a sponsor quarterly within Racers and Rental Cars podcast. There's nothing better than know that sales go up or down or somebody reaches out. So don't discount it. And I'll honestly tell you that probably doing a podcast is maybe one of the easiest things that you carve out time to do to give value, because it doesn't matter when you record. just try to be consistent, which Cam and I are not, because we both have lives and it's a struggle. But nonetheless, if you want something that's easy to do to break yourself off and improve your interviewing skills, I promise you, turning the microphone on and having a camera pointed at you, doing podcasting makes it easy to do. Absolutely easy. And again, Racers and Rental Cars Podcast, email us. Social media wise, it's exactly that. I'm going to hang on for a little while. I do have an engagement tonight that I have to go to. So if you have specific questions, I am watching the chat box. And Alex, Megan, George, I greatly appreciate the invite and enjoy it. And I wish everyone here happy hunting for 2023.
Thank you very much, Don. Much appreciated. Yeah, and you guys are more than welcome to hit up Alex or any of us anytime. Whenever you guys have questions, we're happy to answer them. I think now we're going to kick it over to Megan Meyer. She's going to talk a little bit more about social media. I'm really interested in checking this out.
Yeah, well, that was awesome. Thank you, Alex and George and Don, for everything so far. And so, Don, you mentioned being consistent with it. So that's what we're going to be talking about now, how to be consistent with your social media. And so one thing that I did actually when I was racing, so I don't have a podcast, but one thing that I did that actually got a lot of views and interactions was live video. So doing live videos is kind of similar to podcasts because you're just on camera and you're just talking. There's no editing because it is live, and Instagram and Facebook will automatically publish it to your profile if you want. I mean, you could delete it afterwards if you didn't want to keep it. But yeah, so I would say, hey, if maybe you don't want to start right away with a podcast, maybe try to do some live videos on your social media. So I did those like the day or 2 days after my race, and I would just sit down and talk for 5-10 minutes about what went on the weekend for a race. Were there any struggles we had to overcome? Did we have to do any tuning adjustments, anything like that? So I would say give that a try. But the best way to increase your brand value online is to show up consistently. So you always want to be consistent at the racetrack, and you want to do the same thing with your marketing efforts. So you do not have to post every single day. I do not post every single day. In fact, on Facebook, I only post 3 days a week now. And so when I say be consistent, I'm not saying you have to be on all the time. I'm saying you need to do what works best for you and your schedule. So, like Don was saying, he has a life, he's busy with other stuff going on. So does everybody else. And so people, if you can show up every day, that's awesome, but you don't have to. So see what works for you. Is it 3 days a week? Is it 4 or 5? Is it every other day? See what kind of works best for you and your schedule, and make a plan around it and stick to it. So around like 5 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer. So it was really important on social media to have a very aesthetic, professional looking grid on Instagram. And so I don't know if you guys remember this. I remember like a lot of people said, their top 9. So their first 9 posts, whenever you go to someone's Instagram profile, they wanted their top 9 pictures to look absolutely perfect, and kind of, you could do a little puzzle grid where they all tied together. And, whenever someone came to your profile, you wanted it to look like a magazine. Well, not anymore. So I know that myself and so many people got burnt out on putting in so much time and effort trying to edit, trying to get the perfect images. And this was even really before video became popular on social media. And so just all this time for editing and trying to get the right shot and using stock photography, those days are in the past. And now we're really focusing on being more authentic with your social media. So like I said, myself and others got burnt out on it. And this is kind of like where the influencer term kind of became popular. And so a lot of like the big influencers, that probably worked for them. But for regular people, for people that are, have less than 5,000 followers, trying to have that perfectly magazine editorial look on their social media, you probably never even got compensated for it, because it's just you editing your own photos, putting in the time for, maybe just to get a couple likes on your pictures. And so now the shift is trying to be really authentic with it. And, I really think this shift happened in 2020 in the online space, because of everything that happened with the pandemic. And, everybody pretty much jumped on social media if they weren't already on there, with with TikTok coming out as well. And you would see just a lot more people being real online. So I'm saying that, you want to still show up as yourself, but don't just go out and post anything that's out there in your camera roll. You still want to have pretty images, good videos, you want to have good lighting, but the message is more of the priority instead of the editing nowadays when it comes to your social media. Because the purpose of social media is to really reach people and have a conversation with them. So this kind of all ties back to what they were saying about interactions online. So whether it's a like, a comment, a save, a share, a follow, all interactions and engagements starts from the message that you're sending out on social media. And if people are agreeing, or if they like what you have to say, or even if they dislike it but they leave a comment, that still counts as an interaction. And so you don't have to be out there to please everybody, but still you want to focus on trying to elicit conversations with people when it comes to social media, because it's social, right? You have the ability to talk to people online no matter where they are at in the world. So with a focus nowadays on being honest and real, it's really good to not have to post every day. So don't stress yourself out about it when it comes to trying to post all the time. And so, like I said, try to do every other day, or pick 3 to 4 days a week to post, and try something for about a month or two. See if that works. See if if you have a little bit more time, maybe you could do another post, or maybe you could spend that time working on engagement and interacting on other profiles. Or if you're like, hey, I'm doing 4 days a week and I don't even have time for this, then I would say after a month or two, cut it back, and again, just try and see what works best for you and for your lifestyle, because everybody's different and we're all real people. We all have full-time jobs. I have a full-time job, and I'm also an entrepreneur, and I'm also trying to race at the same time. So I totally get it, guys. And so, okay.
Hey, Megan,
So,
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. When you're
yeah.
talking about deliverables, you spoke about before about having schedules for social media posts for some of your sponsors. Now you're saying that you can schedule it differently and not have to post once a week. What do you do if there's some overlap and you need to make one for your sponsor?
Yeah, good question. So that's where I would say it's really good to plan out your posts ahead of time. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But so I would say, so let's say you are posting 4 days a week, and that's been your schedule for a while. Your followers know, hey, this is when she or he is going to be online. They can kind of expect that from you. Then let's say you post on, there's a day that you have to post for your sponsors and you don't normally post. It's not going to hurt in any way. It just might be, to be honest, your followers might just be scrolling and be like, oh, Megan posted today. I don't think it will hurt in any way. It can help. But really the biggest thing you want to focus on is those interactions and engagements, and trying to get that dialogue going with people online when you are posting. So kind of like what I said earlier, where I always try to include a call to action, or a CTA, in the post. And so that could be like saying, hey, leave your favorite emoji in the comments, or caption this photo. Or and one that I just did actually on our team page was a video of them starting up the car, and my caption was, what do you think is going on here? Wrong answers only. And very short, simple, like no effort put into it, but it got tons and tons of comments, because I'm telling people, hey, leave a comment down below. So you really want to try and focus on that messaging that you're sending out there online. And
That actually leads to a really important question that JC Silva just asked that's along those
okay.
same lines. How important does the context written, besides the hashtags and mentions, given your suggestion to be more human, would a different description, same content, have an impact on the performance of the post or more based on the quality of the content?
That is a good question. So, really, it is kind of depends on everybody's page and how your audience reacts. And so I will say that, okay, so a good example is I've done this for a few years now. So I know that there's certain types of poses or certain types of pictures that I can get that I know are going to do really well. So I'll try and do that same, style, but then change up the captions if one works better than the other. So that way the visual, whether it's a picture or a video, looks similar, but then the caption is going to be different. And so then that way it will tell me, hey, they liked this style of writing, or they liked, what I said in this caption better over this one. And so then that way I'll know, okay, I need to kind of maybe write more like this. And so it could be a longer caption, it could be a shorter one. And like I said, it really depends on your audience, and everybody's audience is different, everybody's demographic in their audience is different, and it's also going to be different depending on which platform you're on as well. So for Facebook is typically older generations, whereas Instagram is kind of that mid-range, and then TikTok is more younger generation. So what you would post on to Facebook, you can post the same visuals on other platforms, but kind of just tweak that caption to where it's going to be a better fit for your audience. But again, that's something that you just kind of have to test it over time. Like I said, I've been doing this for years, and you just kind of test it, tweak, and see what works, and you just do little changes in like your captions or in your visuals, and kind of see what works, so that way you're going in the right direction. And so okay, so let's go back to let's see, where was I at? Oh, okay, so I was talking about what certain days that you are posting. And so I will say for racers, because we typically all race on the weekends, you should always be posting on the weekends when you are racing. So when you're coming up with that schedule of what days you want to post on, always post on the weekends. That way people know, hey, this is how I can tune into Megan or Dawn or Chris and see how they are doing, what are their race results. And so the biggest issue that I see with racers is that they don't keep their pages up to date with their race results in real time. So instead, let's say they might have done bad, so they didn't want to say anything online out of fear of looking like, a bad competitor. Or maybe they did really well, and maybe they even won the race, and they're so caught up in celebrations and winner circle pictures and all that stuff, and then you gotta rush back to the pits, load everything up, and get out that night, that they probably just forgot to post, and they just did not have time to say anything. So I've been in both situations many times over the years, and so for me, I have learned, if I don't keep my fans up to date, if I don't update on the weekends, it's going to make such a big difference. So whether I'm sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, or the winner circle celebrations in real time, you always want to post your race results online as soon as you can. So now you can either do this by yourself. You could have like a family or friend that comes to the track with you, and you can just give them your phone and say, hey, record anything that you can, and then you can let them post it, or they can post it for you, or you can hire a social media manager like me. And so typically what I'll do is I'll get photos and videos, whether it's from the team or maybe from like a track photographer, and have them send me the files. Then I go in and write the captions and post for them. And so that can get pricey, because it is a lot of it is service that we can offer. And so if you don't want to do one of those two options, then your option is that you have to do the work for you. And it's actually not as hard as you think it is. I think a lot of people just overthink it and they get really stressed out and caught up in, oh my gosh, I have to be this big social media influencer, and you really don't. So it's very simple. So you want to start out with a content calendar. So this means planning out what you want to share for that month ahead. So kind of like what George just asked. And so you want to make sure that you're planning out your posts and you're including, hey, this is when I need to post for my sponsors as well. So first you want to pick what days is it that you want to post on in the first place. So maybe, we said you always want to post on the weekends, but during the week, maybe you have to always work overtime on Mondays. Maybe you took off early on Friday. So maybe Monday is not going to be a day that you're posting because you're busy working. So try to figure out what works best for you, pick which days you want to post on, and then make sure you just do the same days every week from there. So you want to just get out a calendar and then fill in the spots. When are you going to post on social media? And then from there, I like to add in all the events that are going on. So your races that you have, if you're doing any special appearances, anything that is race related that you can do. Also anything that your sponsors are doing. So if they're doing any events, if they're doing, if hosting anything, if they're going to be at a trade show, or if there is a certain campaign that they're launching and they want you to be a part of it, you want to include that in your calendar.
And Megan, when you say your calendar, we just had a comment from Valerie Douglas come in that said, put an alarm on your phone to remind you to post. I think that's fantastic because we have a tool in our pocket every day that can remind us to do things like a personal assistant, right?
Yes, exactly. And that is such a good idea. And so you know what? I use an app called ClickUp. And so ClickUp is it's one that you do have to pay for, but I plan my entire life is planned on this app. And so I use it for work, I use it for personal, and it's just basically say I'm a type A, I need lists. And so I can go in and have all my lists and I have categories and I color code them and everything. But I also plan my social media and also for my clients, I plan all of it inside of this app. And then I set day and time of when I need to post, and it will give me a reminder if I have not completed that yet. So, but you don't even have to pay for an app. Like you said, you have a free one in your phone. You can just set a simple alarm on your cell phone for the certain days that you're going to post and what times you're going to post at. And that way it will tell you, hey, you haven't done this yet. Go ahead, take, 30 minutes out of your day, sit down and do it, and then get back to what you were doing. It really doesn't have to take that long. So
do you ever use anything like post schedulers and stuff? Trophy Burrow just says that I think he uses something to schedule his posts.
Yes, I do. And this is one that I talk about inside of my Driven by Social Me. So I use Creator Studio, and Creator Studio is owned by Facebook, which means you can post directly to Facebook and Instagram because Instagram is owned by Facebook. And I know, and it's absolutely free. So that's another reason why I love it. I do know that in the past, social media platforms would kind of penalize you if you didn't post natively onto their pages, meaning you didn't just open up the app and post directly that way. There are a lot of ones out there, and one that I would recommend would be Later. But like I said, I use Creator Studio. It's free, and it only does Facebook and Instagram, but those are the two main platforms that I use for myself and for clients. So definitely look into that. You don't even have to open an account because you just log in directly through Facebook onto there. And so if you have a business page on Facebook already, then you should see in the menu, there will be under like publishing tools or some in the menu, it will say like Creator Studio, and it will take you there directly. And what's awesome about that is you can plan your post to go out ahead of time. So one thing that you could do is, let's say you have a busy week coming up, but you already have your visuals done, you have your captions written out, you already know what you want to post for the week. Instead of waiting for that specific day that you want to post on, you can just go to one of those apps, upload your picture or video, add in the caption, and then tell it, hey, don't post this until Thursday at 5 o'clock, and it will do all the work for you. The only downside of doing that is you are kind of missing out on those live interactions and engagements and conversations that could be happening when that post does go live. So whenever I do make a post, I like to stay on about 15-20 minutes after it is published, just so that way I can respond to comments, respond to any messages that are coming in. I can also go to other pages and interact with them. And then that will help drive traffic to my page, and they can see, oh, she just made a post. Let's read it. Let's go see what that's all about. And so that's the only down part of if you are using those third-party schedulers, you kind of miss out on that unless you actually go in and be like, okay, I know I told this software to post 5 o'clock on Thursday, and let's say it's 5:15. You can go in and catch up with everybody that maybe left a comment on your page or stuff like that. So, but if you don't have time to do it, then go ahead and do that automatic post scheduler, because it's there to save you time, and it's there to make sure you're having that presence online, even though you don't actually have the time to do it yourself. So
yeah, 100%.
So yeah,
you'll
good
probably
question.
actually talk about this too, is that when you do the posts, make sure that you don't go back in and edit the content again, because it resets the algorithm and your post will automatically decrease in likes and it'll put you back down at the bottom. So make sure that when you upload your content, you always have it set before you press post.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, make sure you spell check. And if you are using like one of those third party apps, they will most likely like spell check for you, and if you spell something wrong, they'll put that red line under it. So just always make sure always double check that before you go ahead and post. But you know what, there are some times where, let's say you do make a mistake. I've heard some people say this, and this is from like other marketing and like social media coaches, that sometimes they'll make like a typo mistake on purpose because they want people to notice, and they want people to like leave a comment saying, hey, you spelled this wrong, just so that way they could get that little extra engagement. So I'm not saying to do that, but I'm saying, like, I don't know, that's just what I've heard other people do. So but yeah, so okay, so once so let's go back to the calendar. So you know what days you want to post, and kind of what events you have going on. So then you can go in and fill in the blank spots that you have on your calendar of when you want to post with content categories. So this could be personal stuff, this could be working behind the scenes, which does really, really well online. And so if you want to know any more about content categories, anything like that, I did create an entire e-course. It's called Driven by Social Academy. And so inside of there, it walks you through the complete process of how to use social media for your racing brand. So we start out with, this is how you set up your profiles. And then we go into how to determine what a brand is, your content categories. We talk a lot about photography copyright laws inside of there, because I know there's some racers that maybe will steal photos from photographers just because they see, someone posted a picture of them on Facebook. That doesn't mean you have the right to use that image. And also talk about how to see insights for your post, and then also how to create monthly reports to send that to your sponsors. So you can visit drivenbysocial.com after the summit is over to kind of learn more about what's included in those training videos for you. So, okay, so you have the calendar, you know what days you want to post. We've filled in all the blanks, what your content categories are. And now, so you know what you're going to post. And so it makes it so much easier because now you have this plan. So I like to do this at the beginning of the month, and it just lays it all out for me. And so that way I know, hey, I need to for example, I need to do a sponsored post this weekend because that's what I have I put in my calendar, so I need to follow through and I need to do that. Well, I'm going to be at the track. So let's say the sponsor is Lucas Oil, because that's one of our big partners. So I know that when I get to the track, I need to, I do my job there as a driver, obviously, but I need to create some content for Lucas Oil for my post that I need to publish for them. So it could be pouring the oil into the motor. It could be using their slick mist to clean the car. It could be handing out Lucas Oil stickers to the fans. It could be, your post can be anything that you want it to be about, but just know, hey, I need to get this done this weekend so that way I can meet my deadline that I set on my calendar. And then that way it makes it so much easier. So you have this plan, you have this checklist. And then once you get that done, you don't have to post it right then and there. So let's say you're going to post it later on, but you know that this is your only opportunity to get those pictures and videos. So go ahead, record, take the shots, and then get back to what you need to do at the track. Get back to your job that you're there to do, to race. And so then that way, let's say, it's Monday and this is when you need to do that post for Lucas Oil. So that way you already have the visual done. You don't need to stop what you're doing and go out to the shop and try to do it. You already got that done. All you have to do now is write out the caption, make sure you spell check it so it's right, so you don't have to go back and edit it, and then either schedule it or post it directly onto the apps from there. So by doing it this way, I've noticed I've saved so much time. I'm not stressed out when it comes to creating content for social media. And, and like I said, I like to spend 15, 20 minutes online at the most per platform. So that way I can focus on real life, being a mom, working, and doing all that stuff. So I have a question for everybody that's here. Comment in the chat box if you are on multiple platforms for your racing brand. So what social media platforms do you like to use? So for me, I like to use 3. I do Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for myself and my racing team page. But I want to see how many platforms other people are on. Okay, I've seen two, okay, and TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Okay, so about 2 to 3. So Oliver says 4. Okay, so I'd say 2 to 4. I've seen a little bit in that range. Okay, so 2 to 4. So how many of you, because you're on multiple platforms, how many times do you post once and then share that directly to all the other platforms? So when you make a post on Instagram, it lets you share that directly to Facebook, and you can also share it directly to Twitter. So if that is something that you are doing, kind of talked about earlier with Rick, that's something that you need to stop doing, because it is hurting you, and it's hurting it's hurting your engagement and your ranking with the algorithm because of that. So if you are on multiple platforms, you don't have to post on the same platforms every single day. So for our team's racing page, I do every other day and I stagger it. So one day is Facebook, the next day is Instagram, then the next day is Facebook, and then I go back to Instagram. So I do end up posting something every single day of the week, but it only ends up being 3 days on Facebook and 4 days on Instagram, or vice versa. So that's just something you can think in mind. You don't have to post on the same platforms every single day at the same time. If you are posting your race results in real time, though, what I will say is you can switch it up. So you can post at the same time on your platforms, but try to different visuals, and you can use the same caption but tweak the caption a little bit so it's perfect for that platform. So Rick was saying, when you do hashtags or @ mentions, However, they have their username set up on Instagram. If it's different than on Facebook, it will not tag that page. And also, hashtags don't work that great on Facebook anyway, so you really don't even need to include them in your Facebook post. So, what you would post on Instagram, you'd have that at mention, you'd have hashtags, and then you have like your race results. Tweak it just a little bit so that way it's a better fit for the other platform that you're going to be posting on. You can use different visuals. So let's say you have a picture on one and then you do a video on a different platform. You can totally do that and post at the same time, but just make sure you're not doing the exact same post on every platform, because I don't know about you, but I know when I'm scrolling through social media, I'm scrolling, I'm just checking it out, seeing what people are doing. I'm on Instagram. And then what do? I immediately pop back over to Facebook. Now, if I'm on Facebook and I see that same post from the same person, they posted the thing, I'm not going to interact with it because I already just did it over here on Instagram. So you want to make sure you just kind of stagger it, or if you are posting at the same time because you're sharing race results in real time, you want to just then try to do different content so that way it's not repetitive when people are just scrolling and they're hopping over between platforms. So hope that all makes sense, and I think we are ready to move on to the next section. Is that right? Okay, awesome. All right, and I see Patrick is here ready to go. And so Patrick is the group owner on LinkedIn. And so, like I said, that was one of the pages that I like to use as well. And also, everyone can find me on social media at meganmeyer.racing. So feel free to find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn if you are on those pages. But anyways, Patrick is going to talk to us. He's got the largest motorsports group on LinkedIn. It has 43,000 members, and I know I'm one of them. And he's going to talk about insights on how to use LinkedIn to create profitable B2B relationships.
Hey, Megan, thanks a lot for that. Again, thanks for the opportunity today. Great handover, great that you were sharing here. What I'm going to do is make an attempt to share my screen. Somebody can give me the heads up. You can see my screen. I will dutifully start the process. So if anybody can give me a heads up, I'll get started.
Yeah, I think you're good to go.
Excellent. So, today's subject, really brief, but I'm going to share, and I think it's a great compliment for what Megan was talking about is, LinkedIn, when you think of social media, you think of like, okay, friends, followers, likes, all that stuff. And when I was talking to Alex a couple of weeks ago, one of the things I wanted to talk about is like LinkedIn is really where the money is, right? So certainly by generating content on YouTube, all the various YouTube, your social media channels, that's where you can get like money for all the viewers and things like that. But where LinkedIn is where the decision makers reside. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. But really, before I kind of dive into that, I want to just explain how MPG briefly kind of came to being. So why did Motorsports Professionals Group even exist in the first place? Well, the first part is my own personal history is I've been working in or around motorsports for quite some time, particularly starting at actually even before that, with a Champ Car team called Sigma Autosport via a .com that I worked for at the time. We were a sponsor, got some great exposure with Ford Motorsports, really started making some great connections with people at FedEx, various teams, our own team sponsors, and then just within the industry. And then when I transitioned to General Motors, I became the motorsports guy at the agency I worked with. So I ended up getting all the motorsports properties, and then still just more and more kind of collecting a bunch of business cards and having this great motorsports Rolodex. So when LinkedIn came along, which was kind of like this professional networking tool, I started just plugging in every single one of those business cards and really had a great connectivity individually to motorsports. But what I didn't have was like a group. And frankly, at the time that LinkedIn initially started, there were no groups. Well, when the group started, the first thing I thought of was, wow, man, when I've always wanted to get my foot in the door in motorsports, what would be a great platform to, kind of just get everybody together? Because I know there's so many people out there that are knocking on the door to try to get in the sport, and they just don't know where to go. And so essentially what I did is I filled the void. I could have probably started a group for automotive professionals. I could have started one for former Marines, but the one I wanted to do is for motorsports because I didn't see anything out there. So I just originally initially invited a lot of my own personal contacts to join. I will tell you that, like, when I got my 10th person to join the group, I thought I was big stuff. I was like, I have 10 people, and then it grew to 20, and then it grew to 45. But what I really wanted to do is create a place where people within the sport can network. How can I connect to someone in Formula One or in NASCAR or powerboat racing or any form of motorsport? So the fundamental, driver there was just opening that. Now, the one thing I will tell you, the two things is key to just running this group is, one, I have personally accepted every single member of this group. There's not one person in this group that I didn't hit approve. So I don't just automatically allow people in. The second thing is I've kept the group true to its task. So it has been and always will be a motorsports networking group. I've had, people try to take it over. They want to talk about politics, they're gone. And so I wanted to make sure that I run a group that has stayed true to its purpose. And anytime you go in there, 9 times out of 10, all the content that's in there is motorsports related, and all the people are there for one thing. So proudly, I will mention that as of just a few minutes ago, I'm already at 43,305 members. So again, imagine how excited I was when I got my 25th member, and to get to 43,000 where we're at today is great. And we're trending towards, I think we'll probably hit 50,000 sometimes early next year. So just to really start that is really kind of a primer for like talking about how to leverage LinkedIn as a tool. I want to really kind of emphasize this, right? So there's LinkedIn clout, and then it's versus clout. So like a phrase you'll hear in social media is like, I'm chasing clout, right? And that's where, like you have to do the more outrageous video to get more likes, things like that. And what I'm really talking about is clout is, am I networked with the people that really matter, that can make decisions in my motorsports career, help develop whatever, platform that I'm developing, or really just get the attention to get that one sponsor to kind of, put us on the track. So the one thing I really want to emphasize here is LinkedIn is a professional network and not necessarily a social one. And what I mean by that is the distinction is, nobody who's linked in with me cares about what I had for dinner last night. Nobody cares about where I went on vacation. Nobody cares about, the birthday party that I hosted for my for my niece or something. Okay. On the professional side, though, what I am interested in is, tell me about the cool stuff that you're doing. Holy crap, you're at this event. Oh my God, you're at this race. Oh my God, you've got this new product. So I always try to keep that key distinction, because when LinkedIn leaks into politics, personal things like that, I see a lot less engagement in it because there's other places for that. And when I am linking with you as a professional, I want to engage with you as a professional, and I want to talk to you in those terms. Whereas if I'm linking in with you socially, yeah, all those things I mentioned earlier are acceptable, but I just want to make sure that, like, in my experience, I see LinkedIn as a tool for professional networking, and really want to be a part of that solution and not letting it de-evolve into storing with other platforms. So the other part, like I talked about cloud, is, you're getting likes not for clout, not to feel good. You're getting likes because, like, the content that you're sharing is acceptable. It's interesting to your colleagues or the people that are within your network. But what I want to kind of take into account is, whether I have 3,000 followers, I have 200 followers, and I have 10 likes or 50 likes, it's not like anything I can necessarily cash in, except for all you're doing within your network and the people that you're trying to engage is really kind of establishing your credibility. So you're not doing anything over the top for the sake of doing it. You're doing it because you're bringing content and something that would be valuable to people that you're networked with. So the thing that I kind of always really look at is, let's say I was a prospective sponsor and I obviously, evaluated sponsorships with my various OEM duties in the past, is I'm going to go right to your professional profile. And frankly, that's going to be my first impression and really a resource for your brand. I'm going to learn very quickly what you're about by just getting that first impression on your professional profile. So what I've done since day one on LinkedIn has been meticulous about like adding all the elements that LinkedIn offers to you, but then more making sure that my information's current. I'm talking about things that are relevant. And frankly, I would tell you, just from a career standpoint, like for people that I'm looking for, making sure that the content in there is really rich for search engine engagement, if you will. If I'm looking for that type of person or that type of resource, I want to have the words in there that reflect the things that I'm capable of doing. So I think that's like really, really key when you're talking about how to like leverage LinkedIn. So we've talked a little bit about like the personal piece, but I really want to talk about the who of LinkedIn and really what drives that. So one of the first things I ask everyone is, why are you here? If you're on LinkedIn because you want everyone to know, as I mentioned before, what you had for dinner last night or the birthday party that you hosted for your niece, probably not a great resource. So let me give you a couple things that I think are valuable. One is the network. The way that like my LinkedIn profile is set up and the connections that I have are really like, how do they interact and how does this network, kind of work as its own ecosystem under my roof, right? So the key things that you'll see in my network is, because I've worked primarily in automotive, I have a lot of OEM contacts. I have a lot of dealer contacts. I have a lot of industry contacts. What I've done with them over time is, when I need that type of like resource, I need to ask someone who knows something that I don't know, I leverage it in that way. But what's key to that is like, how is your network connected? How does it make sense? How does people over here now leverage the fact that because of Patrick Shelton, I have that resource on the other side? So connecting hypothetically teams, drivers with potential companies that might be sponsors or agents, those are things that I do in my network. Obviously, within the brands that I've worked on the automotive side, I also kind of interlink there, and if you see it, it kind of makes sense. The next thing,
Patrick, we actually had a comment come in, if you don't mind.
Sure, because I can't see. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no worries. So Colin Schmidt asks, would you start a new LinkedIn account to do this with? I use my current one to connect with other engineers within my current career, so I'm not sure if that would work the same or if I should start a new one, more of a casual account.
I would absolutely transform your existing account into what you need it to be for right now. So what I've seen is when people have dual accounts, you're just creating confusion when someone's looking you up. What you can do though, and what's great about LinkedIn is you have the ability to add comment or add content that's relevant to what you're doing and still keep that linkage to your past, if you will. And it's actually, in my opinion, for what it's supposed to do, is very flexible. So my recommendation in that case is keep it original, because when I see multiple accounts and I see people all over the place, that just sends a bad, I wouldn't go as far as a red flag, but it's just not a good look. So, and by the way, if you have more questions, if you just chime in. The only thing is I can't see the screen because I'm kind of just looking at my presentation right now. But the other part is, showcase your expertise. So what you'll see on my page is things that I've done, things that I've accomplished. And that's happened is when I've had conversations, they see demonstrable successes in marketing and advertising and things that I've actually deployed and technology that I've done. But the other thing, though, I think is key is don't just set it and forget it, because nobody cares about like the direct mail campaign I did in 2003, because maybe that's not that relevant. But what I do want to make sure is people seeing that I work actively in the digital space and I have an understanding of it, which then leads me to the next piece is tell a narrative. For me, career-wise, one of my goals is to be a marketing director, and I've, obviously attained that. But I wanted to be able to see, if you looked at my LinkedIn page, all the kind of pieces that go into what makes someone effective as a marketing director, and you could kind of follow that lineage. So in the case of motorsports, how am I a brand ambassador? How am I an engineer for the next, Penske car in IndyCar? All those things can be done that really kind of help you break through the clutter, especially with what you're trying to achieve. So again, always start with that first thing of what are you trying to do? If you just have a LinkedIn page to have one, that's okay. But if you're trying to further your career, your business, your network, if you will, what you're trying to do, be thinking about that. How do you weave those things together? And so really from there, the results, right? What I've always seen with LinkedIn is it's been a great way to open doors to engagement, how to set up those conversations, especially when you're trying to establish yourself as an expert in the field. So like, for example, me and Alex have not been lifelong friends, but I think by having that exchange and working together on LinkedIn, and he knows what I'm about and I've learned what he's about, it really helped us establish trust. And I think that part is great. And really this last piece, if you really have one key takeaway of how to leverage LinkedIn, is use it to move to real conversations. If you establish that like great foundation of what you're both about and why you're trying to have this conversation, that's what's key. Where I see it fail is, and I would tell you, don't be that person, is, okay, I see somebody who makes a LinkedIn request. I accept the person, and 5 minutes later, I get an email that's pitching me something, and they don't know crap about me. So like, make sure that like you're opening that door to engagement, you're establishing trust, and you're moving those real conversations.
Say, hey,
So
Patrick,
what I'm
it's
going to
Alex.
do
Can
is
you hear me?
Sure. Yeah, Alex, good.
Hey, sorry, I had a question. You made me think of something. I'm in my 50s, and I've been on LinkedIn for quite a while. I use LinkedIn, and I have a lot of connections through LinkedIn. I've probably been on it over a decade, I'm guessing. But I know a young racer who is in 8th grade, and he just created his very first LinkedIn account. How do you think somebody who's young and just starting out, a young teenager, how can they use it relative to an older person like myself with a long resume of history I can post? How can children or youth use LinkedIn to make better connections and promote themselves?
Alex, I absolutely love that question, and I'm going to tell you right now because I've seen it. I think of the DU Orlandos that are coming up through the IndyCar Road to Indy series. I've been linked in with them probably 7 or 8 years, and I'm talking when these kids were probably in elementary school. But what they've done, and what I highly recommend, is it establishes your professionalism at a very, very young age. And it really gives them a leg up over so many others. So to see them kind of get to the cusp of, reaching IndyCar or open wheel success someplace else, I highly, highly recommend that. I've seen parents or, agents or whatever establish these pages, and they really, really can help establish your brand from a very, very early period. That I so absolutely commend that, and would encourage anybody to do that, because it also keeps away the clutter, because I don't need a 10 or 12-year-old's Facebook page or TikTok account. It's really in their best interest that I'm not on there, right? But having that LinkedIn lineage and knowing them and seeing them develop, professionally, and develop their careers at an early stage, I think it provides massive, massive advantages. So I would highly recommend that.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Which then is a great segue, really just kind of turn this to results. And really, I want to talk about two things: what LinkedIn is and what it isn't, right? So the first thing is, LinkedIn is not Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snap, and Reddit. They have different objectives. Your objective on LinkedIn is to put that professional face forward so that someone who doesn't know you, that this is kind of doing the work, right? So actively, make sure that you've got the content on there that if you were to bump into a CEO one day, you've got the information that would make them go, okay, yeah, let's pick up the phone and let's talk to this individual. One thing I'm going to just say for many of my female colleagues, so I'm just going to point this out. LinkedIn is not a dating site. So I wouldn't expect anybody on a call like this to use that, but I always just kind of remind that this is not really the intention of LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of great platforms out there, and frankly, I just think that's just a bad look all the way around. So I've seen both male and female, kind of profile pictures that are a little bit curious. I think you're always, imagine LinkedIn is you walking on an elevator accidentally with a CEO or chief marketing officer of a major brand. What would you want them to see? So I just kind of make that a kind of key piece. And then lastly, it's not a money tree, but well, it kind of is, because what I would say is by developing the right connections and presenting yourself in a professional way, it's going to open doors to other things. And really what you want with LinkedIn is not that you're kind of the chaser, but in fact, people are kind of calling you. And I would tell you in my own personal experience, like it works really well when you have the right things out there and then people are picking up the phone, reaching out to you. So what I want to really just kind of wrap up here is like what LinkedIn is, right? It's a great way to locate decision makers. When I've been trying to navigate particular situations, whether it be an OEM, a brand that I want to work with, it is a great tool for really getting to know and trying to identify who's making the decision in this organization. And if they're available, and I would say anybody kind of worth their salt is probably on this site, it's a great way to start getting those insights. And so here, I kind of talk about it's a tool for gathering insights. So what I would tell you is, as a veteran, as a person who still likes a lot of military things, I love open source intelligence, right? I like a lot of the information that you find about what's going on in Ukraine, Afghanistan, whatever it is. And so LinkedIn is a great open source intelligence piece, and it helps you gather insights, because frankly, if you're trying to get or establish trust or a relationship with a decision maker, learning this is where this person grew up, this is where he went to college, these are the companies he's worked with, this is what their experiences have been. It really helps you navigate and formulate conversations that are going to matter to the person on the other end. And so the other part that I would say, and this is more for teams, racers, whatever have you, is that it is your 24/7 resume. It is your brand. And I think it's a great representation of what you're about, what you're trying to accomplish, and really what your credentials are. And I think that's extremely important. And then the last part, and really this is kind of going back to the whole point of Motorsports Professionals Group and my own journey on LinkedIn, is it's very connective. I have great professional contacts and relationships that have either translated from the real world into LinkedIn, that I've been able to follow people's careers and kind of stay connected in that way, or vice versa, people that I would have never met had it not been for LinkedIn, and particularly my group, that like have been, lifelong friends and relationships. The thing I like to kind of, humble brag about is that weekends like 2 weekends ago, where you have like Monaco, Indy 500, NASCAR, all the things that were going on globally in motorsports, I was proud of the fact that I had members at every single event on those big, Formula One, NASCAR, NHRA, IndyCar, supercar V8s from Australia to whatever have you, and having membership represented there. So like, that's what I really, really, value the resource that this group has created. And frankly, the jobs and revenue that I think it's generated for other people that I've never asked for a thing for, except for participating in my group. So I kind of leave it at that. It's what you make of it, but certainly I think the biggest part is the connectivity that it creates and the opportunity that the group itself does under that.
Very good info, Patrick. I really appreciate it. All right, if you want to take your screen sharing away, we're gonna ask some questions with you and Alex here.
And Megan.
And Megan too, yeah. Let's see here. So I'm going to get all three of you guys on the screen real quick. And one of the questions that actually came in through a personal direct message, I think this is pretty important. I'm not going to say who it came from, but it's one of the people that's watching the show. The point that Patrick made about picking up the phone and getting in contact with the CEO, he feels confident that he could do that with pretty much anything that he does in his professional career with as being an engineer. But he's a little timid being able to do that with his racing career. And he wants to know how he can get through that or push through that, or, any suggestions would be very helpful.
I'll start real quick and I'll say, don't be a salesman to start. Get to know somebody first, form the relationship, just like a deck, before you propose. But I always like to form that personal relationship before I jump into the professional, unless the person knows that I'm approaching them for a professional reason. I actually approached Patrick and I said, hey, we're going to host a summit. I think you need to be part of it because you got the largest group on LinkedIn and, you have a very impressive resume. So Patrick picked up the call instantly and we've been speaking ever since. And that's why he's part of this very integral part, educating a lot of us. So there are times when you can jump right into business, but I do find personally, when it comes to selling sponsorships, I try to start the relationship as a friendship before I turn it into a sales prospect.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that, Alex, which I think you're 100% spot on, is there's enough information on someone's profile that really can give you the insight of hey, you're a Big Ten fan. Well, I'm a big Northwestern fan. So you can start that way, or even some of the companies that you've worked at. I can't tell you how many times a lot of these great relationships start because I worked at General Motors at the same time you do, and we all know the same people, or you look at their profile and you're connected to somebody that might happen to be your best friend that you never knew this person before. So that's another where I would say is it's a way to leverage icebreakers in that terms. It's how do you know Alex? Well, me and Alex did this thing together back in 2022. So those are things that I think, again, that open social intelligence that really can help, kind of move the needle forward.
And Patrick, with another comment come in that's very similar. Nicole asks the same basic question is, how do you merge your LinkedIn account to have the professional and then the racing side, or whatever it is that you're trying to combine? Maybe you could give us a couple examples since that question has come through twice.
That's a good question.
What I would tell you is it's not easy because someone's going to want to have their motorsports profession put forward, and then obviously you might have a different thing. So I can't think of his name right now, but there's a gentleman that I know, I've known him for a long time, and he races in Grand Am, and he's also a prominent kind of computer programmer. And really what you don't see is a lot of overlap, but he's been able to navigate for quite some time. But the other thing I would think of is I think of teams like Mercedes F1 has a great F1 or a great LinkedIn page. So does Penske Racing. They have a great LinkedIn page. So I do think that there's a space when appropriate for a team's own LinkedIn kind of relationship. But navigating that, I would almost say case by case. If I was starting out, I'm going to be my own brand as the driver and maybe not so much on Shelton Motorsport just yet.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, to add on to that, Patrick, I think with any social media, the content that you're posting, you don't have to do the exact same thing all the time. You can switch it up. So you can try to do some racing posts and see how it does if people are interacting with it, and then do a couple more that are related to your job and your industry, and kind of just test it and kind of see what works and see what doesn't work, and kind of just go from there. With social media, or really with everything, you're just always testing and trying to improve and get better with it, whether it's it is media or racing, you know, you're always trying to test out different parts and stuff like that, see what makes you even just a tenth of a second faster. So kind of use that same concept when it comes to social media. And I did want to add from that first question, I love that LinkedIn shows who's your like your first, second, and third connections. Like no other social media platform does that, and it makes it so much easier for you to be able to like know how to reach out to someone and to see who your mutual connections are. And then that way, like Patrick was saying, if it was someone that maybe you're friends with that is a mutual connection or someone that you worked with, reach out to that person that you know and see if they could do like a three-way message to introduce you and the person you're trying to get in touch with, and start the conversation from there.
So Patrick and Megan, we actually had Evelyn comment in saying, what if your main income business is motorsports related and you're also a racer and driver? I can see that being a little bit easier, but maybe some suggestions?
I think then that's completely, I think, within the bounds of appropriateness, because that's what you do and you've associated yourself with that. The only thing I would say is, you know, obviously if it's a new venture, you know, let's say I'm going to start my own airline, you know, I probably need some kind of icebreaker for that. But I think in that case, that makes absolute sense, and merging them together like that's what you do. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and you know, if you're, so she said that her main income and business is motorsports related, then you can definitely share about how, you know, whatever it is that's your business, you can share about that and results that you're getting through that, whether it's a service or a product that you're offering. And then you can also, you know, post about that one day and then the next day post about, oh, this is, you know, by the way, I raced this and this is my next race that's coming up. And then maybe if there's anybody that you have connections with that's maybe in the area that you're racing with, you could invite them to the event through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was just going to throw this in there as an example of another young gentleman is Daniel Dye drives in the Menards ARCA series right now. Another kid, I've known him since he's 10 years old. And again, he's built his presence and his professional persona, and like what he does maybe in other Facebook mediums different. I really admire that he's kind of built up a brand from a young age, and really we know what he's trying to do. I mean, he wants to get sponsors, he wants to work his way up the cup, but having that presence, especially in an early age, again, I there's no red flags in my mind for it, as long as, you know, obviously you keep it within bounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I just want to add when it comes to like what you're posting on LinkedIn, you don't have to use it as often as you do the other social media platforms. You know, I use LinkedIn 2 days a week. That, I mean, that's about all that I'm on there actively posting. Now I do try and log in, you know, at least every day just to kind of see what's new, what's going on, and interact with other people there. So that way, you know, my name's still getting out there and getting seen. But what's really cool with like the LinkedIn algorithm is it's not as like chronological as some of the other platforms are. So what I've noticed is that I'll see a post that comes up on my newsfeed and it'll be a week or 2 weeks old, but people are still interacting with it and leaving comments. And so that's why it showed up to me, because maybe, you know, one of my mutual connections left a comment on it and it's something that they think I would be interested in. And so the shelf life of content on LinkedIn, I think, is a lot longer. So you don't need to post as often on there as you do on other platforms. Would you say that's kind of correct, Patrick?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. What's great about LinkedIn, it's quality over quantity. People that are just, you know, firing it off every day, I just think they just get lost in the clutter. But what is amazing is, and you just pointed that out, is I'll see something I posted a month ago and someone will like it, and I'm like, what? Like, I can't even remember. I can remember doing it, but I'm just like, this thing's still floating around. So it really, you nailed it on the head. The content that you do, if it's quality, it has a lot longer shelf life, and I think that's another cool benefit.
Right on, right on. Guys, that was really informative. I learned a lot on that one. That was great. Thank you so much. Patrick, thank you for participating. Megan, holding it down. You're doing great over there. How's Henry doing today?
He's good. So they're out on a walk right now. So he's hopefully he's taking a nap or something. So
All
he's not
right.
gonna be cranky later.
Hey, I got to run. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And for those of you out there that haven't joined a group, join a group. It's pretty cool. We won't bite. And again, thanks for the opportunity, Alex. Love the great talking to you.
Right on. Thanks again, Patrick.
All right, take care.
All right. So on the theme of creating value, and obviously there's value in social media through all the different platforms, including LinkedIn. And we talked about how to get on podcasts. I think it's also relevant. Let's go traditional media, getting into newspapers, magazines, television. That's all still part of racing and sports and motorsports. Older people like myself, we love magazines. We probably read a lot more magazines than we spend online. Younger generations tend to spend more time online, but if you're going to market to me, my demographic, you need to be in certain magazines or I might not see or read about you. My next couple guests, I know one is on, Dan Schechner, he's editor of PRI Magazine, and Marty Fiolka. I've known Marty a long time, 20 years. He was writing for Dirt Sports Magazine back in the day, I think editor of Dirt Sports or publisher. Now he owns the Rensport Group and he runs Crandon, and he also writes for Racer Magazine. So we have Marty and Dan on, right? I'm getting a thumbs up, so I think they're on there. Dan, are you there?
I'm here, Alex.
Oh, there he is. Hey, there he is. Right on. How about Marty? Marty, you there? No, Marty, you're muted. Marty, there's a little icon you have to click in order to unmute.
It should be on now.
There you go. Right on. Hey, Marty. Hey, are you at Crandon? You in Wisconsin?
I'm actually sitting in the barn at Crandon. Yep.
Nah, it looks like it.
Yeah,
I thought so.
Here in beautiful Wisconsin, and pleased to be talking to y'all.
Well, last time you and I talked, you were on the drive to Wisconsin just a few days ago. So I'm glad you made it. Glad you're there. Everybody's safe, and now the fun starts.
Yeah, I am here every summer. So our first race next week, and then of course the World Championship on Labor Day. So
right on.
Easy for that.
Excellent. Hey, let's jump right into it. Dan, I'm not getting the publicity that I really need because I really haven't been doing all that great racing, and I'm not in the media. No one's writing about me. I need to do something to promote myself and my sponsors. I need to somehow get the word out about my story. What is it that interests a magazine? What type of content do you look for, or what is it that passes through the editorial filter in order to get published? Can you help us out here?
I can, Alex, and thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining me. I just wanted to know, how come Megan's not doing this session? Did we draw the short straw or something? Or
she's so good at what she does. I needed a little attention too because she's so far taken all the limelight from me. She's good.
All right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity here. So it's a big question, and I think that I will start by saying, know your audience. I think that is critically important. I think that there are so many different kinds of publications out there. There are so many different media outlets out there that if you don't know what you're pitching to and who you're pitching to and what kind of coverage they like, you are already starting out way behind the 8 ball. So that would be the first thing, is absolutely know what type of content they run. Pick up some magazines, go to some websites. I mean, depending on what kind of media you're trying to attract, what kind of media attention you're trying to attract, be cognizant of who their audience is, and start there. I have way more to say on this, but I don't want to take up all the time. If Marty wants to weigh in.
That's what Marty has to say. Then we'll come back to Dan.
Yeah, no, so I would come a different perspective because I still race. I've owned a racing for a long time. I ran magazines, as you said, but I was also in public relations at a pretty high level too. So kind of all the trifecta of all three. And I kind of break it down pretty simply. To me, you have to disperse, first of all. You have to be the one that's dispersing information, writing great press releases. How can you do that? Communicate on a lot of levels. Get an email list going, which some people open emails with press releases. That's one thing. And, that makes it much easier to get your message out there. Secondly, reverse. Dispersing your reverse engineer, kind of what Dan was saying about you have to get in the head of the editor and say what's going to be interesting to them. And furthermore, nowadays, it's not a matter of pitching, it's also a matter of doing. A lot of times my successes come from actually saying, okay, this is what I like to cover, but I'm going to ghostwrite it for you. I'll get photography done for you at no cost. And for the editors, who need a lot of content or high quality content, especially at that level, that makes it way, way easier to get coverage because you're actually doing it. As long as it's balanced and fair. Again, you got to be a balanced journalist if you're going to think. Again, you're going to. And the last thing is, with the most successful thing I've done is immerse. So I've got dispersed. I've reversed engineered this. Now immersing, and what immersing means, we did that a lot in my whole racing careers. I actually befriend media and then say, okay, how about I come into our race shop? Or how about I come into a race with us? Or even better yet, why don't you come do a ride along in my race car? Or be part of our crew, or better yet, take them on, like Baja's perfect for this, take them on a trip to Baja, approach some sponsors, let them help pay for that cost. And that's where you get the big, long stories. And, it may not be related to one particular sponsor, but it's your race team.
Yeah, so that's actually key. You were talking about providing a lot of the content already. When someone writes a story, now let's go over some super basics. What is the number of words or number of pages? Do you use first person or do you use third person? Are you writing from a perspective of someone looking, or are you trying to tell a story? What tends to appeal to you in terms of what would you like to elaborate on and write more about that could get published? How does a racer start if they're going to send you some content to potentially use?
So I think that's a really good question, but I think the first thing that you should determine is whether the magazine that you are pitching to accepts contributed pieces. There are a lot that do, and there are a lot that don't. PRI does not really accept contributed pieces. However, I would say this, and I'm going to tell you something that goes against everything that you've ever heard, which is I'm going to say think inside the box. Right. And the box is right here. The box is the magazine. So what I mean by think inside the box is look at that magazine and look at the columns they run. Look at the departments they run. Look at the features. I love that Mark mentioned reverse engineering because it's so smart and it's so applicable in so many different ways. But what I would do if I was interested in this is go through the magazine that you're interested in pitching and say, okay, you know what? They do columns on sponsorship, or they do columns that may cover sponsorship, or they write features on products. Well, one of the companies that sponsors me makes these types of products. Maybe that could be a good opportunity to link up. I mean, we always talk about being a brand ambassador, which is it's a great phrase, a great term. Why not be a full brand ambassador and reach out to an editor and say, hey, I noticed that you guys are covering crankshaft's next issue. This company that sponsors me is doing something really cool in cranks. Why don't you give them a call? Nice. Holy crap, nobody's ever done that with me before. And if they did it, I would be so impressed, nice. Right? So it's going kind of beyond that traditional concept of, what can you do for me, or what can I do for you beyond, putting your name on my car or my shirt.
And that makes sense because they're making your job easier by doing that. And
that's
anytime
at the
someone
top
makes
of my
your job
list.
easier. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. I can see
top
that.
of my list, 4 words, make my life easy. So you got it.
Nice.
Especially in the days of, with the old days, we had huge staffs and huge writing staffs. It was much, you could, when you were a journalist, you could spend a month writing 2 stories, where even when I was doing Dirt Sports, I was writing a ton of content, and it goes back to, but it's a great point that Dan made. We had a section in Dirt Sports that was masterpiece in metal. It was where we took the best looking off-road race vehicles and put them in a studio with our photographer, Boyd Janes, and we gave it 8 pages of the most beautifully shot content in history of the sport. And we had people lined up. But what was great about it was by the time we did it, maybe for 6 months when we first started, the racing community itself knew that if their race car wasn't good enough to get in, then they couldn't do it. But the companies that we were dealing with were really happy all of a sudden to provide product and start talking about the things that were in that story. And sometimes that photography was transferred to those companies to use. It was kind of this symbiotic relationship. That was kind of the centerpiece of the magazine. But I think you're right. I think, thinking inside the box is kind of what I'm saying about reverse engineering. You're in my chair now. what am I looking for? What do I need help with? And if you can do that, again, it has to go back to the quality thing. You have to have some semblance of writing knowledge. The better the art, the better the chance of getting published. I mean, the art, I'm not talking about iPhone photography. I'm talking sometimes really beautiful photography, and that always helps tell the story. And that's been a kind of a key to the PR success for me, is just saying, okay, I'm going to provide these guys turnkey, beautiful content that I'm almost going to say, and that it's applicable to their market. They're almost not going to be able to say no.
I like that art thing and looking good, looking creative, artistic, because that is the first thing when you open a magazine is you do tend, your eyes will navigate and draw towards the images first, and then if the image is compelling, then you read the story. Do you guys ever select a story to write based upon an image you got, or do you always match the images to a story that you're trying to tell?
So I'll give you an example on that from last year's PRI show. And what happened was there was a racer from Street Outlaws who brought his wrecked 57 Bel Air to the PRI show.
Wrecked.
And what's that?
You said wrecked?
Wrecked. He
Okay.
brought the crumpled remains of his 57 Bel Air that he wrecked on TV to the PRI show. And it was a really compelling display. I mean, he had it roped off like with yellow, caution tape. And he displayed that on the show floor, and he put his helmet on top, and it was essentially to show how important good fabrication is and good safety equipment is. And I was thumbing through the pictures from this past year's show, and I saw that, and I said, holy shit, excuse me, but that was like,
that's a great
why
idea.
did somebody bring a wrecked car? And we did a story on it for our safety issue in April. So
excellent. Marty, how about with you? You picked the story first, or did you pick the picture first? Because I remember the masterpiece. I remember I'd open up Motorsports to the back page first and thumb through it backwards.
I mean, it tended to be where, in those situations, if we do race coverage, that was one thing, but Dirt Sports was never about the race coverage. It was about personality pieces, history pieces. Well, obviously the photography comes first. You tell us backstory of that photo. We did a lot of that. But a lot of times we'd go to an event, and Boyd and I would kind of find the groove at the event, at a race, let's say, and then we'd come up with an art thing or a theme that we could put a personality in. Like one time we went down to Baja to Ensenada, and we put Pete Storm, who's no longer with us, we put him in a mariachi in one of Papa's and Who songs, and had them play the mariachi band. That was like our cover shot. But we kind of came up with it down. We didn't know what we were doing. But that kind of begat the story, right? Then where you kind of followed always afterwards. It was never like sometimes we did, most of the time we go to these events and never know what we were going to come up with, because there were all these races. You had 300 race cars. That means you had 10,000 personalities, matter of sifting through and finding them. But it also kind of goes back to when you're trying to pitch your story as a racer. Honestly, the kind of the struggle story, and my dad did this, and he was a desert. Those, everybody's heard those. Every editor has heard 1,000 of those stories. It's really, it gets down to trying to find something better, something deeper or something more unique, or there's always something about this that makes your story better. And it can be a million things, whether with a race car or something like PRI, there's 10,000 parts, well, they're coming from somewhere. So, helping link, like Dan said, link the manufacturer with the race car via the team. That's a great conduit. And also, sponsors love talking to media that you actually put them in touch with, because they're not doing it on their own. They're making crankshafts. But yes. So that's part of the success too.
That's a really good point. So let's talk real quick about the demographics of each of your magazines. Who are you reaching with Racer Magazine and then next down PRI Magazine?
Well, Racer, we're very fortunate to be involved with them since they started too. And, we brought a lot of off-road content for the last few years to Racer with the thought that, off-road racing, which is my niche, has not ever gotten this respect like a Formula One has, or NASCAR or IndyCar, sports car racing. But when we actually brought off-road racing to Racer in the Racer style, their numbers went way up. They had huge following because these people who didn't really understand it before were seeing it in this really big platform, which Racer is. And, it was very successful for a long time. But the demographic were people that were outside of off-road racing, and it worked. And that was part of it. But you have to do it in a really timely, concise, racer style, which is, very visual, very well written articles or editorials, and it worked.
So essentially, any racer on the call or watching the recording that has a compelling story, good artwork, and writes well, or at least writes something that's interesting, could be potential content for your magazine.
Let's go to Dan.
No, that was for you, Marty, but that's okay. We'll go to Dan. I know Dan's too.
Yeah,
Dan, all right. I mean, that's all racing, right?
Yeah. No,
Both
the
of you.
racing platform is very selective, and I think in that one, that magazine and platform to me has always represented the highest quality of photography, design, storytelling, writing.
Yes.
I mean, so it's very likely it probably won't, but doesn't mean you can't get ghost written for somebody else. Or there's always ways to do it. It's kind of more creative that way.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, so Alex, PRI's always been more focused on the business to business, right? So from the manufacturers to the retailers to the engine builders and fabricators and speed shops and all those folks. So that's kind of the sandbox that we're in. But like I said, within that, there's a lot of room for opportunity. And for example, and this because you were in our magazine. You've actually been in our magazine a few times, but we've done stories about how to improve your sponsorship ROI, right? Which you were a great source for. We did a story. We have a point counterpoint column where you argue for one side and the other. And we did a story on, is it better to sponsor a racer or a racetrack? Like, where do you get better value? So there's opportunities for racers to get involved on different levels. The audience that makes up our main readership are the folks, like their customers are racers. You know what I mean? So there's a pretty direct line really throughout. So even though, like I said, we're more considered a traditional B2B, we incorporate all elements and all aspects, of the industry. So cool. Like I said, it may not seem intuitive, but we're absolutely open.
Well, that's cool.
To contributions. Yeah.
So along those lines, it looks like George is saying we have a question.
Yeah. So actually, I don't even know who's going to answer this. So Marty or Dan could probably help with this. Magazines are still the upper echelon of coverage because it's the elite of print media. Think of it this way. If an EMP goes off, I'm assuming some sort of digital asset goes offline, your digital assets disappear, but magazines will still be available.
I can answer that a little bit. We can probably both, what Dan was saying, he has a B2B magazine that's in that lane in the sandbox. Dirt sports, racer are going right to consumers, right? So, they have a tangible thing now, and magazines to that level have been what we made a mistake years ago. I knew it, and we didn't fix it. We should have went from a monthly to a bi-monthly or to a quarterly. Raised the level of photography or even printing even more. You had a higher cost to have it, which we've seen in some magazines now. Hot Rod Journal Surface Journal has done it, where we could even make better coffee table content. Dusty Times does it now in the off-road world. So, that's the stuff that you talk about, the upper echelon of journalism or photography or storytelling. That's where it lies for a magazine to a retail customer, to just a customer.
Right on.
Yeah, I think what Marty's saying, there's a standard, I think, that goes with publishing, and it's something that maybe it's a personal thing or it's an individual thing, but I don't want to say you're held to a higher standard, but maybe I should. I think that it's
absolutely are held to a higher standard with print.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
about that.
I'm trying
no
to
question. And I can say it from a third-party perspective, 100%.
Yeah, and so you have to be really careful. It goes through a lot of vetting. You've got to make sure that what you say and write and print and publish is reputable, because you can spend years and months building up a reputation, but it can be torn down like that.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question then, and this will be the last question. We actually only have about a minute left, so it went real fast. But if I were to have a article printed about my team and my sponsors are mentioned, and let's say it's a full page article with a nice photo, what type of value could a racer estimate that has to a sponsor if they list what they did for the sponsor throughout the year at the end in the proof of performance report? In my proof of performance report, I'm going to show all the media that I got, some television I might have been on, how I placed at the races, but I also got a full page write-up in your magazine. What's a rough estimate that a racer can give to a sponsor and say, look, this is the value I created for you? Because when it comes down to it, we're all here looking for dollars, and the racers are trying to get dollars from sponsors. What would you say a racer's approach should be to a company?
I would take it a couple different ways. I think the low-hanging fruit is the rate card, right? Because a full-page ad in PRI magazine is $4,000, and that's a one-time full-page ad. That's pretty easy to understand for just about anybody. I think then you can go and you say, well, you have to consider how many times this is viewed and how many times this is seen and by how many different types of people. We do reader surveys every couple of years and we have those stats. So I know how many eyeballs are on PRI magazine each month. And we can expand that out into a year or however much, whatever metric we want to put on it. But then there's digital, right? I mean, we're talking print, but print is really just the vehicle because we share everything online. We share everything social. We have 350,000 Facebook followers. We have like 130,000 on Instagram. So, if you want to really start talking some big numbers, go to the distribution and don't just stop at print, but go to digital, go to all the channels that they go to and say, you know what, it gets pushed out through the e-newsletter. That's another 100,000. The numbers start to get pretty big.
Right on. That makes sense.
Yeah, and just to real quick, we always did a multiplier of page rate times editorial because editorial had more value. It was coming from an authentic source. So if you had a story written about one page on a driver that mentioned a sponsor, we always thought that was at least 2 or 3 times what the page rate was because it was actually editorial. So we looked at it that way.
Yeah, I look at it like that as well with all traditional media. Well, guys, thank you very much for providing some insights. Love both magazines. Love all of them. Love Dirt Sports. I mean, that was my favorite back in the day. So thank you guys so much for giving the insights. I'm going to hand it over now to Megan. I think Megan should be back. I can't see the screen, but they'll tell me in a second.
Yes, I am here.
All right. And now we get to learn how to activate at events. And you got a couple of guys here who know events very well.
Yeah, so okay, so I need Matt and Kevin. I don't know if they are ready yet. I'm not seeing them on my first screen. But while they're getting ready, so Matt Martelli is the CEO of the Mint 400 and the California 300, which are 2 races that I would love to go to because we're out here in Colorado right now riding razors. And then we have Kevin Miller, who's the CEO of USAC. And so we're going to talk about proper activation, how we can increase results, and the ROI for sponsorships and cost of activations as well too. So hi guys, how are you doing today?
Great. How you guys doing?
Great, Megan. How are you?
Good. So, okay, so let's start off with Matt. So I come from the drag racing side, so I am not too familiar with your side of motorsport. So can you kind of explain what it's like when we're at one of your races and what type of activations are there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a unique sport in that we're racing in the desert. So we don't have a lot of infrastructure, which sometimes makes activation more challenging. However, the Mint 400 has been happening since 1968 in Las Vegas. So we have part of our activation downtown Las Vegas on Fremont Street. And then the race portion of our activation is out at State Line at Prim. So it's a little bit different. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah. Well, and Kevin, how about you? So how does it kind of work when someone goes to a USAC event for you?
Well, for us, we have multiple events around the country. At any given time, like this weekend, we have events in the United Kingdom. We have events going down in, we're with SRX actually down in Pensacola tonight, quarter-minute races. So we're fortunate to be a very diverse sanctioning body that has literally thousands of events. I'm kind of jealous of Matt. I know he does an incredible job with the Mint and being able to activate on Fremont Street. So he does a super job there. For us, it's challenging because we go from venue to venue. Literally, this week in Pennsylvania, we have 5 races at 5 tracks. So we'll close up shop at 10:30 at night and move on to the next event and start setting up at 3 o'clock the next day. So we're in challenging environments, just like Matt said. Anytime you're at a facility that's temporary, whether it's in the desert, an off-road track, a circle track, you walk in and you're trying to brand and create an experience for fans that are there in a very short order on a very challenging environment to do that.
I have a real quick question. Can you guys hear me? Oh, Kevin,
Yep.
and if, correct me on my history, but was USAC the very first sanctioning body of the Indy 500?
Technically, no. The very first was actually AAA.
Okay.
AAA was the sanctioning body from the origination until 1956, and they actually had to depart motorsports with a very fiery crash at Le Mans in 1955. And so the reason the United States Auto Club sounds like AAA was that it was founded with the departure of AAA out of motorsports.
I did
So
not know that.
1956, USAC took over until 1998 of Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
All right, thanks. I did not know that.
Nice. Well, me neither. Awesome. Okay. So Kevin, how can, let's say a racer at one of your events has an opportunity with a sponsor and they want to do an activation at one of the events that they're going to be racing at, kind of what's the process that they need to go to with you to have them at that event? And I know for like with the drag racing side, NHRA charges a good fee for that. Is there anything like that you kind of do?
Actually, no. So I'll give you a couple different examples. Again, we're so diverse that we have different stories to tell. We run a new Porsche series. It's about 2 years old, run at all the big venues. We're just in Miami with Formula One. And we have some of the drivers come to us all the time, trying to activate their relationships, which they come to us as a series because we have an expanded footprint in front of the fan base than just one car. And we're more than willing to help out. On the sprint car side and the dirt track side, we tell our drivers, come to us. The entire game changed about 3 years ago with streaming video and online live production. In 2019, we went on board with Flow Sports. And it's a struggle for a driver to put a sticker on a car and charge a sponsor significant money when he has nothing to do with the production of the entire event. That's from the announcer, from the pit reporter talking. So the driver does have to engage the series and try and say, look, how do I get my sponsor into the show? And how do I do more things? We're looking for examples. I'll give you one. We went to a couple of our drivers with an oil company. 5 of our drivers are sponsored by AMSOIL. And we're like, hey, why don't you guys change oil in the parking lot during the fans when they come in? Let's do a promotion. One of the fans win an oil change on behalf of the driver. Let the driver change your oil in the parking lot. We'll film it, put it in our production, and we can play that on Flow where there's 40 to 50,000 people watching that night. So, I do think that the best thing for drivers to do is, number one, build their social footprint. Bryce Menzies does a great job of building a fan base, building followers, and then promoting those products. Rico Abreu, who's a sprint car driver, he does an incredible job. He's selling his fire suits and helmets on social media, and he gets amazing numbers of people giving him money for those products. So it definitely is up to the driver to step up, come to the series and say, how can we help each other? and that is a key for us.
Yeah, I mean, I would jump in and second that. I mean, what's different about our style of racing is like the Mint has north of 400 teams racing. So we look at that and we go, this is great. It's the best, social media math equation we can imagine, because that means we have 400 stars, right? That are all going to push out content via social media. And so we actually want to, and we do supercharge those relationships, because we're fortunate in that we're a media group first and foremost. So we're taking the content that we're actually shooting and handing it off to a lot of our racers, and then we take it a step further and help them and their their filmers, whoever they have helping them, create content and narratives around the event. That ultimately is the value of what we're doing here, is in terms of social media impact. It's got these unique layers, and how it plays into how you activate at events. It's layer number one is the racers, right? Layer number two is what is the activation that the sponsors are doing, and layer number three is what are all the spectators doing and saying online, right? We encourage all that. So it's a math equation. It's like if we have 400 race teams with roughly 10 people per team in support, you do the math right there, and that's just racers, right? That's 4,000 people. Then add bigger teams and so on and so forth, force multiplied with spectators, 40 to 60,000 spectators, and all of a sudden you have a massive impact, right? So it plays a big part, and we encourage racers to be aggressive, both at our event, leading into our event, post event, and even beyond that.
Yeah, we actually give our racers, we give them information during the day before a race to be able to post things. And for racers, it's one thing to make a post. It's easy to say, hey, I'll be racing tonight and tag my sponsor. But in reality, what the sponsors are looking for engagement. How are you engaging that brand with your followers, or engaging that brand with the series? It's getting people to talk about the brand. So I've had a lot of sponsorships in the last few years, and obviously there's definitely a different generation of marketing managers at companies that manage brands today than when I was my former days of managing the Mopar brand. We didn't have measurement tools. The old story was, well, how do you know you're getting your payback in motorsports? You don't. It's a gut feel. Today, it's all about measurement. So brands are sitting there measuring. They're not just measuring how many followers you have. They're measuring how many engaged followers you have. How many people are talking about your post? How many people are liking your post? So when you're engaging a brand as a driver and you're putting that brand out there, one, you need to do it in a positive light for the most part. But you're trying to engage people to talk about that interaction with that brand. And so as a racer, again, sometimes with the series, it can be challenging. There are a lot of racers that have competing brands with the series, and that becomes an issue for us, right? So we're the Amsoil Sprint Car Series. Well, obviously, if somebody comes with brand X oil, it's very difficult for us to help them activate that through us. Now, we don't have a tremendous platform of sponsors that are protecting that, but it goes right back to the days of Torque Off-Road when we were the Red Bull Torque Series, and we had I'm trying to remember. I think it was Rob McCacker. Rob was a Rockstar guy, but
Probably
they were handing
Bryce.
out Monster.
No, it was
they were
Greaves.
handing out cans.
It was
Greaves.
Greaves.
It was Greaves. Handing out cans of Monster Energy from his pit, and so the Red Bull guys were all torqued up, and take down the Monster. So we had to make rules. You couldn't have a Monster or a banner that went over the top of your semi or the height. So series have to do these things and work with the drivers to help them still get those sponsorships, but also pay respect to, obviously going to Crandon, and they have a whole another list of sponsorships. So there's always give and take in the world of sponsorships because tracks, racers, and series have all different sponsors, and we all have to work together to make it work.
Hey, Kevin, real quick, I want to jump in and I remember those days at Torque, with the Monster and the Red Bull, and I've had the same thing with power tools. I had Bosch and
Yes.
Makita going head to head. And what can a team do if they're on the wrong side of the series sponsorship? If the series sponsors the competitor of the racer, what are ways racers can still get their sponsors exposure and visibility?
Number one, they win.
There you go.
Because we have seen cases where we've had some pretty ticked off sponsors when they're giving the series money, but the other guy's winning all the time. So
Right.
that generally torques up sponsors enough, I go back to my Mopar days. We were at the Mopar Mile High Nationals, which Mopar sponsored the event, but Chevrolet was the official car of the track. But in the suite, you had the Mopar suite and the GM suite side by side, and as the pro stocks went down the strip, the banging on the walls and some of that rivalry is very healthy with sponsors, because in my past, sponsors want to win. And it's not just about sponsoring. You're there because you have a competitive edge. I've been through a lot of our series where you have a spec tire or spec engines, and it's not fun. Go back to IndyCar when they had one engine, the Honda engine. It wasn't fun for Honda to have a spec series. They want to win and compete and then brag about it. And most sponsors are in it for that competitive spirit as well. You got to feed that spirit.
Yeah, just to jump in and back up what Kevin's saying, this is about competition, right? And I understand, category exclusives and all those things are valid when the dollars make sense. But I will say that, like, we have to remember that you're not winning by beating yourself, right? You have to have competitors there to say, hey, I beat Toyo Tires, I beat BFGoodrich, I beat Maxxis, whatever camp you're in. That's what this is about. And that's what we're offering a relatively even playing field to come out and battle out, so that nobody knows. I don't know, as a promoter, I don't know what the outcome is. Every year at the Mint 400, everybody goes, well, who do you think is going to win? And I'm like, well, I have a range of people, but every year it comes down to the last lap, to the last, few miles. And you're like, okay, cool. Last year, Kyle Jurgensen won. Like, would I have picked him? No, I would have not picked him as one of the guys who could have won it. So that it's a very important thing to understand, even in between brands, is that our job as promoters is to give them value. But part of that value is that they're in competition, they're beating other brands. So we don't dictate the outcome of the races.
What if a new racer's not winning? What if a new team wants to race one of the series and they're really not getting on the podium yet, but they're looking for visibility, and what can they do to activate for their sponsors?
That's content, and to what Kevin was speaking about earlier, it's like, it depends, so like, I'll just be, blunt with, BFGoodrich Tires is the title sponsor of the Mint 400. They have a category exclusive. So when other tire brands come in and say, hey, I want to be a part of this, I have to go to them and say, well, are you comfortable with them doing this? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But that athlete could activate unilaterally. Like, it doesn't become commercial in our eyes until that content gets distributed on commercial social media. In other words, like, we wouldn't have an issue with it, with the athlete promoting. In fact, we want him to promote. But once it crosses over and goes to, Toyo's, social media, then it's an issue, because they're currently not a sponsor or whatever brand. But speaking to what we were talking about earlier, I think you have to be aggressive as a driver. Like, I tell racers all the time, like, they go, hey, why didn't I get on TV and why didn't nobody's talking about me? I'm like, dude, I don't know you. You know what I mean? So let's just start with having a relationship and telling me your story and why I should care about you amongst the 400 racers that we have. And there's a lot of really good stories out there, and our job is to curate the narrative and to give our consumers somebody to grasp onto. The guy I love using as an example of this is, of course, in short course, was Robbie Woods, right? He was a broke kid from Pahrump who, saved scrap metal and built a race car. It's an incredible story, right? He relates to a specific type of demographic that's very important. And so we started telling his story. At the time, he was not on podium, and he eventually got there. But just by knowing his story, it gave us something to work with. So for racers out there, I would say, don't be shy. Reach out to the promoter, tell them your story. Even if you don't get any airtime, then at least they know who you are.
Yeah, I think that reminded me of Ross Hoke when we had the old Torch series on Discovery Channel. Ross was he'd get his butt beat most of the time. Occasionally he'd get on the podium, but he always had a story to tell, and so he got airtime because of that. And in today's world of social and streaming platforms, we're looking for stories all the time. You don't have to be a winner. You've got to be engaged. You've got to engage yourself. Any marketing manager can go out there for $10,000. I can go get multi-millions of impressions on social media. I can make a post, spend $10,000 as a brand. I'm going to get a crap load of likes, follows, impressions, whatever measurement I want for $10,000. If I give you $10,000 for your race car, what am I going to get? So how do you compare that? So you've got to do something for that brand to deserve that $10,000. It's not making a post. You've got to go out there and fight for it. You've got to, if you want to get that $10,000 next year, you're going to have to engage people, engage the streaming platform, tell stories. You're going to have to do something to create people talking about that brand. Sometimes, and we see this all the time, you get the guy that wants to be the bad boy. Sometimes that's not all that bad. They get a lot of airtime. They get a certain niche of followers. Sometimes you have to penalize them because they go over the line. But everybody has a different angle. And the key is, just because you're not on the box doesn't mean you don't have a story for that night. And because we're looking for content for social media, working content for Flow Sports, we need those stories, because that helps us grow our brand in our series as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And so when you are working with certain companies that are activating, do you have certain objectives that you're trying to achieve with them? So would it be like lead generating, sales, brand awareness, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It depends on what the brand's after, but I could tell you for us, like, jumping out of the digital world into the physical world, we always have to justify all the expenses. Like, okay, you come to the Mint, it's X amount for a booth, you've got $10,000 in traveling your people and hotels and food and all that stuff. So it adds up very quickly. So lead generation is a really important one. Like, we are very big on pushing for data, because we know that once you engage with those people, you're going to convert them, and at least convert a percentage of them. And whether that's physically on site or whether it's contests leading into it, that's a very high priority for us, because we're as an event, we're always trying to grow our user base, right? So we push that a lot, and try and work with, our different sponsors and build valuable activations, so that, like one of them that we do every year with BFGoodrich is we do a pretty huge giveaway for a VIP experience at the Mint 400. And we get, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people that enter into that contest. And we gather all their data, and then at least we know, like, hey, these guys are somewhat interested in what we're doing, so they can become future spectators and future people that come to the race or watch the race online.
Yeah, we've had some challenges. I think one of the biggest thing for brands is activating for them. It's easy for a brand to write a check. It's hard for a brand to come out to your event and activate, because corporations have, travel restrictions and all the barriers in front of them. And when they ship out tents and banners and people, that cost add up greatly. So one of the lessons I've learned over my career is try to be the activator for them. Try and walk into that brand and say, look, we have 100 national sprint car Silver Crown and midget races between our 3 series. No brand's going to come to 100 events, none. So we have to go to that brand and say, here's what we're going to do for you. Tonight, we're starting something brand new. We've had a brand that was a relatively little known parts brand. They have virtually no followers, and our job is to make them have followers. And it's been a challenge because, quite frankly, an automotive part is a commodity. You don't really give a shit about the brand. When a driver drives into the service station or dealership to get his car fixed, he doesn't care what starter goes on. He wants his car to start. So the guy who cares about the brand is the guy who touches the box, not the guy driving the car. So it's very hard for you to engage them at a brand perspective in an auto parts world. So what we're trying to do is build this brand, and you have to do it in alternative ways. And tonight, what we're doing for the first time is a digital campaign where we're going to give 4 drivers as the fans' choice for the GSP driving performance of the night. And the fans will vote. Of the 4, they'll vote 1 driver. Once they make that vote, they text it in. They got an automated text back that allows them to enter a contest for a road rally across the United States for a free trip. And to get that free trip, they have to go follow, the social media platform of GSP Parts. So what we're trying to do is get the fans engaged with the brand and then give the fans something. So instead of going out to 100 events, we're using Flow Sports as the medium to get to many, many more people through a text campaign to get the results and information that virtually costs nothing for us to do.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great idea. Do you guys have any like really good examples of activations that were really successful that you can share?
Matt, you got a million.
Yeah, somebody's in the comments, so I'm gonna clarify too. Activation, what activation means is great. Now you've sponsored the event. What is the physical presence on site beyond banners? Like, how is your company going to interact with that said audience, right? That's what activation is. So one of the best guys in the business and really our title sponsor, BFGoodrich, they do a fantastic job activating. And what they've realized is these types of events aren't just good for, activating to customers, but also to businesses. So they fly in, dozens of their dealers and their retailers, and they bring them to the event. They showcase products. They introduce products at our event. And so they're doing communication and activation to the consumer and to all the businesses that they are connected to. I would say that's one of the best. Physical stuff, I've seen a lot of really cool stuff. Everything from a different photo booths to physical handouts to different type of interactive stuff. So I think the best way to engage with consumers is to get physical interaction, because then it's a more of a tangible interaction, and that person has that embedded in their memory. They didn't just go, yeah, I went to the Mint 400, I saw a bunch of BFGoodrich banners. It's like, no, I went to the Mint 400, I went to the BFGoodrich booth, I had this really cool experience taking my photo or getting a shirt pressed or 9 million other things that could be done. And now they're more connected with the brand. The other one that I mentioned is another sponsor of ours, Fox. They've done a really remarkable activation where they take they take a user and they put them in a vehicle and they drive them around an obstacle course with 3 different shock setups so that they can feel what their product does, right? And that's time consuming and it's expensive, but every single one of those people who sits in that seat comes away with that light bulb moment of like, okay, I understand a stock vehicle feels like this and an enhanced vehicle feels like that. That to me is really, the ultimate type of activation.
We had a really, really good example in the last 2 years that just kind of happened naturally. We started our Porsche series, Sebring, and one of our sponsors is Warsteiner beer, a German beer. And it was supposed to be a big, big sponsorship, big mega dollar deal. And of course, COVID came and the shipping container cost of shipping beer to US grew by 4 times. And so really the sponsorship came down to virtually not much at all. But we liked the idea of a beer company and a German beer company at that. So we basically did a great deal that said, hey, just bring us a bunch of beer. And so our first race, we decided we're going to have a prost, a toast to our series. And we make sure we do it on Friday night before the racing starts, because then you get some grumpy people. And since then, every race, we have the Warsteiner Prost. The engagement of all of our drivers coming by for that 15 minutes of free beer, pizza at our hospitality center has been tremendous. In fact, it lifted the entire series all last year, where a lot of road racing people started talking about the new Porsche Sprint Challenge, It's so much fun. It's so much fun. I really pay a lot of that credit to Warsteiner that allowed us to have that engagement. And what's interesting is the number of drivers who have come up continuously, because we have free beer all weekend, that say how good the Warsteiner beer really is, that they've never experienced it before. So we took something that was very simple and made it a very engaging proposition for the teams. And it's been a great relationship. And again, it's not financially rewarding, but the overall lift of the entire series from something so small as free beer really, really helped us as the series grow. And to the point where last year's series, we averaged 23 cars, and this year we're averaging 52 cars, because people came out and said, that's a fun series.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I don't know who wouldn't want free beer anyway. So that sounds like the perfect activation for you guys. And so Matt, you had said something that reminded me of one. You talked about pressing shirts and like printing shirts at the track. And so I remember at a drag race that I went to, I mean, it's been at least 10 years, and it was really cool. There was just this guy all by himself in just this little tiny trailer, and he was printing all of the t-shirts for that event. And he had like maybe 5 or 6 different designs, and you could pick which design you want, what shirt, and he would do the the heat press on the shirt, and then you'd have your shirt there. And I know I still have that shirt to this day because it's one of my favorite shirts, and it was all because of an activation at a race. Now the race wasn't anything special, it was just a local series. It wasn't a big event, but I remember that stuck into my mind. So that's something that maybe one of the racers on the call today could use that as an idea for an activation at an event. Have a couple different t-shirt designs, just 1 or 2 colors, nothing too fancy with the design, something that's very simple that you could use a heat press and do it for them right then and there at the track, and you just want to make sure you have a memorable experience for the fans and the spectators, that they're going to remember you, and then of course remember the sponsor that's there.
Yeah, you're making a really good point, and it's the combination of, a tactile experience and, being in this, racing visceral environment. And that's ultimately what we're selling, is that, sure, am I happy when people watch, our events online or on television? Yeah, that's great. But I really want them to be there, because that's where the magic happens. And especially the interaction between athletes and, and fans, right? And that's one thing that we're very fortunate with, being in America and being American racing is that we embrace that. We're not, off-road racing in particular, it's not the elitist, you can't get near the racer. We do a grid walk. We allow everybody to come out and touch and feel the vehicles, right before the race and even, days before the race. So I can't overstate that more, that, just making that physical connection with your fans is the highest importance.
One thing about that, by the way, the physical connection with fans, is when fans are allowed up close in the pits to take photos, those photos don't reside on the phone forever. They tend to be shared on social media. So every photo with a race car or with a team, any photo that a fan takes, they're going to share that with all of their friends and followers on social. So boom, it goes viral. And by allowing that kind of interaction in the pits, I think it just really creates more value for the teams that are involved, because now they can maybe show up on Hookett's social media algorithms by saying, hey, look, this one photo got you blank coverage and has so much value. So yeah, thanks guys. You guys, all three of you did great. That was a very good session. I love about activating. Activating is everything. And Matt, you and I talked many times. The cost of a sponsorship is usually half the cost of the actual price of the sponsorship, and maybe even 2 or 3 times, the cost in activation. So when a company plans on be participating either in a racing series or on a race team, the company always needs to have a budget for activation as well as just the sponsorship. Or if that's not the case, then the team has to take part of that budget and use it for activation.
Yeah, and that's part of our responsibility is to help brands, properly activate at our events. So, best case scenario is that we're in a relationship in which, they can do so and we can help guide them, because ultimately we want them to be successful and maintain a long-term relationship, not just with us, but really it's, these events, and especially racing, it's the entry point into the culture, right? So there is no better entry point into the culture of whether it's pavement racing, a dirt track racing, off-road racing. This is, by far the best entry point into it.
It is. Right on. Right on. Well, I see Megan now has Henry back, and it's getting late out there. I'm going to take over. But before we go and head to the next session, we have one relevant question. Go ahead.
And I'm not sure who wants to answer this. It'll probably be Matt or Kevin. But what is the best way to get or capture clients' information at events, like emails, follows, etc.?
That's a good question.
Really physically, that's the best way. So you have some sort of value that you're offering them, and you're asking them to either enter their information or you're entering their information for them. I find it's better for them to enter their information, because it's also creating this connection, right? So they're now entered to win X, right? And you've got their email and cell phone, etc. So at event, that's the best way. Pre-event, digital, it's online. And we love doing contests because it both advertises our event and it hypes everybody up. They get excited about the event. Oh man, I might win, all expense paid trip to the Mint 400, VIP, everything in hotel rooms. Like, that's a pretty cool, thing.
We have a real simple one. Again, go back to Amsoil. For years, we've been trying to figure out how to do better engagement for the brand. So we came up with Amsoil inside the oval. And when you come to the race, you pluck your name down and we'll draw a name, and the winner gets them and a guest, and we take them inside the dirt track oval for the feature event, kind of like the VIP seats at a hockey game. So it really, really does work for the data collection that we're looking to do, the physical data collection, but that's 100% right. Outside of that data collection at the event, digital is so easy to collect lots more data for that brand. So the combination of both are very powerful.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm going to take over since Megan has her hands full. Hi, Henry.
Yeah.
Hi.
Well, I just want to add something really quick before. So for getting that information online, that's something that teams can do too, by doing giveaways online. So one thing that I really like to do with our sponsors is, send them free products, and the way how they get to sign up for that is to either like fill out a survey or just sign up for my newsletter list. And so when they sign up for the newsletter list, it will give them this certain tag, so I know, hey, they signed up for this giveaway. And then that way I'm getting their information, and I can then share that with the sponsors, especially like if I am doing a survey where, the survey could be like, what are the tools that you like to use, or what products do you use on your daily driver, stuff like that. That's really important information that I can then share with the sponsor and let them know, hey, they're using your product or they're not using your product, so how can we, kind of influence them and stuff like that. So, activating outside of events, you can still do that with social media, and do it just by like hosting giveaways and then picking one random person that completed the survey or just simply signed up for a newsletter to then send them a gift box with some free products and samples like that. So that's something that I've done in the past that has worked really well for us.
Excellent. And Henry seems to agree, so it works. All right. Hey, Matt and Kevin, if you guys can hang on for maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, we're going to do a quick segment on a sponsorship success story. And then right after that, I'm going to go around and everybody can contribute any last tips, tricks, advice, last words, and what you guys are predicting for next year. So if you can hang on, I'll be back with you two in 20 minutes. In the meantime, let me introduce Jason Coleman. Is Jason on the call? Julian Gill. And Ted Livingston. I think these guys are all here.
Yeah. How we doing?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, there we go. So, all right. What this is about is this is my proof, and this is just a quick testimonial that you can do it. What we're talking about today, creating value and finding a primary sponsor, is very accessible. You can do it. And I got a call last year, or maybe it was an email from a racer who I didn't know, that asked if I would review his deck. I did. I do it all the time, and usually they're pretty bad. Usually it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. And that's the reason why I wrote Motorsports Marketing and Sponsorships, was because I got tired of telling people what I think they should be doing differently. So I figured I'd just write it down and send it out. Well, this deck came through and it was really good. It was one of the best I've seen. A couple minor changes, just things that I didn't think were as relevant, but 90% of it was outstanding. And I thought, I think I know a good company who might like this. So I suggested that he forward it over, not use my name because I didn't want to influence and I didn't want to be the guy sending decks to everybody. That happens a lot sometimes. People ask me to forward things and I won't. But this time I did. It was the only time I did. And I'm going to let Jason Coleman take over from here because Jason is the driver who I now know, and his story is amazing.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Yeah, I read Motorsports Marketing and Sponsorships. Honestly, I'm not a big hard book reader, but I read this thing cover to cover twice, and in a matter of a couple of days, and I fell in love with the concepts of just what I was doing wrong. And like you said, I sent you my deck thinking, hey, I think I followed all the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, and thought I had a pretty good setup here. And then, just kind of talking through it, I really just wanted your opinion of it. And you gave me those tips, and then we got talking more. And then, the introduction led to talking to IBOC. And it's funny, I love telling the story because I called IBOC, if you're around any kind of sport that has shocks and springs, IBOC is synonymous with the upper echelon of great quality products. And so, I was at a time where I needed to put new springs on my truck. We're headed into the Baja 500, just come off the San Felipe 250 win. And so, feeling good about ourselves, and got the intro and got a call set up with IBOC. And, initially just really kind of a cold, distant greeting. I think they, just like many of these guys, get thousands of calls from people. And I just kind of went through my normal spiel. As a business owner myself, I understand that, hey, they need to get ROI. They need to, have someone who's not just asking for $1 million and say, hey, see you later, I'm going to go race and I'll give you some exposure. So, I really try to take these concepts to heart, and I just explained how I feel about going about those ways of doing that. Ask them about their business and what their kind of targets were. And it just so happened that as this conversation went on, they were kind of looking to do something. My truck was purposely unbranded. I had no name on the side of the truck. And frankly, all I was looking for was product. I wanted to get a couple $1,000s worth of product. Most of my sponsor deals have been product and significant size of dollars, but product was easy to get for me and always has been in my career. And this led to all of a sudden, well, hey, there's nothing on the door. And I said, yeah, there's a reason for that. And of course, I'm funding the whole thing myself, and I don't put my big company on there for saying, hey, it's kind of a sponsor me. And it just, the conversation went on, and then all of a sudden it turned to, well, guys, how about, the 500 is coming up. Let's do something. And it led to, all right, let's try this. It's kind of the right time as we're entering this new opportunity and wanted to go a different direction. And we did that, and we set up some deliverables, and went off great. And we had a great time. And then from there, it was just like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. We wanted to continue with the series. There were some series issues with just kind of contractual stuff. So, I instantly turned to, hey, let's look at King of the Hammers. Let's go stateside. This is a great event for activation, much like the Mint 400. I could not make the Mint at the time. And it was, long story short, it was an intro that led to me asking for product and turned into what is now my title sponsorship. And it's been a year that we've been with these guys, and they've been just tremendous. And we just keep kind of adding new things and new ideas and spinning from there. But it was a lot of what I learned out of your book, Alex, and I really took it to heart. And you gave me some backup tips, and the rest is kind of history.
Well, that's cool. Let's ask Ted. Ted, why is the King of the Hammers and the Mint 400 events like that such good proving grounds for endemic brands like Eibach? Just in 60 seconds to 2 minutes, so we don't go over time.
Yeah, for sure. It's an extremely difficult one-day event. You're gonna hit crazy terrain that you can take springs like Eibach and any other products and really put it to the test. So coming out to Johnson Valley and putting your products to the test, and as racers, it's a wonderful opportunity to meet up with your sponsors that you're connected with, and also come into Hammertown and see the vendors and all the really hundreds of sponsors and vendors that are there. If you need to, I heard it earlier today, is that face-to-face connection. So
right.
We are happy to host that and glad that it has worked out.
Yeah, excellent. And also events like yours it's a great place to collect content and to create content, because it's you pretty much have a wide open platform where you can film and tell stories. Julian, I'm going to close with you on this little story here, and then we're going to show a video. But from a company's perspective, and ladies and gentlemen, we now have the CEO of Eibach Springs about to tell us what enticed them to this particular team in order to give the Coleman Motorsports a primary. What was it about the package or the team or the approach?
It was a lot of things, really. I mean, it was the perfect star alignment for Jason and for us, because we're coming out of COVID, or we're still in COVID at that point. Excuse me. And we were looking at different ways of attracting customers. And I mean the end consumer. I'm not talking about B2B, I'm talking B2C, and getting our name out. And we could see with COVID that the big indoor shows just weren't working. And when at the point when we were approached by Jason, we were still sitting there, are they going to work? What's the future? Where are we going with all of this? And at that point, we'd already made the decision not to do big indoors. So we're saying, okay, as we're coming out of COVID, a lot of these outdoor events are going to go. And I jokingly said, we ought to do something at King of the Hammers, but I don't want banners just down the valley. Can we do something? A couple of days later, I get the sales manager and the marketing manager come in with big grins on their face. And that doesn't happen when they both come in my office at the same time. And they sit there and they go, how would you like our name on a bloody great big red truck going around the desert? Okay, that's how many millions is that going to cost me? No. We go through the figures, we do all the add-ons, and we talk about giving away t-shirts, and we're giving out hoodies with doing everything in the red. And it was just seemed perfect. And you don't get that very often. And I'm going to be honest with Jason, I didn't read your deck until a couple of days ago. But I didn't need to, because when both of them come in holding it and saying this is good, And I mean this with respect to a lot of people. We get tons of decks all the time. 90% of them don't make them out of the marketing office. And of that 10% that do, probably only 10% more make it out of the sales office, because we have got to see that return of our investment. And Jason offered us what we felt was a very good thing, because our name was out there with somebody who's doing well at racing. He's a nice guy. His crew are incredibly accommodating to us, prepared to help with us, prepared for customers, the end customer, to come and talk to them in the pits, smiles for the camera, and presentable and wholesome. And I mean, I know that sounds very old-fashioned, but it's what you want. I mean, we're a family brand. We want to be represented by family racers. And I can't say anything more about, I mean, the video shows how we feel about it, and we still get a lot of likes on it. We've been able to use a lot of content. And as Jason also said, it just started as the King of the Hammers event, but it's rolled on throughout the year. And we're going to be using the vehicle for various shows and various other events, and using the merchandise. It was just that alignment, and that doesn't happen very often. But you go back to where we started. If the deck hadn't been presented properly, it wouldn't have made it out of the marketing department. And that is incredibly important. And and as Mark, our marketing manager, said to me, he's offering us stuff rather than taking stuff off us. And that, it was very much a two-way street.
So by the time it got to you, your team had already vetted it, and you knew to trust your team. So you signed off and said, let's do it.
Well, yes. I mean, it's you have to trust them. If they don't, there's something wrong. But I mean, it's the final budget figure that came out had to be signed off by myself. But as I say at the very beginning, when both of them are happy about it, because sales and marketing have very different views of what they want to do. But when they both come at you and say, this is a good idea, it's very hard to fight it.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I thank all three of you for sharing that story. And I think one of the valuable things about creating content for sponsors is that you can tell a story, and you can tell a story through videos. And what Coleman Motorsports obviously did was create videos. This is one of many videos. It's part of a story of videos, and it's about a little over 10 minutes. So kick back, relax, enjoy the story, and watch what kind of content you can create that adds value to a sponsor. It's not just logo. There's a lot of logos, but it shows the endurance, it shows the brand, it shows the people behind it, and it makes it real. And this is the type of story that sponsors like to be told.
Hi. It's dusty out there. Thank God for Laser Town.
Alright, okay. I'll do all the sides. Oh, we're getting ready for some carne asada breakfast burritos. Got the hash browns going off, a little pico, some carne, some cheese, and what everybody else's request may be.
The 2022 King of the Hammers. We're in line for tech. We got to get this truck teched, get the racing tracks tracking unit on the truck, and then we will be ready to race. Like I said, this race is going to be pretty much trying to stay out of the dust, so line choice is going to be key for making passes or just getting a little bit of clean air to charge up to that guy in front of us. They're going to qualify us and then stack us, re-rack us with mixed in with the trophy trucks. So there's a potential we can start next to a trophy truck, which is going to be hard with all that power disadvantage off the line. But we will we'll do what we can and charge to the front.
32 degrees in the morning. I don't want to do this first thing in the morning, so do it tonight. Coffee's ready to go. Nothing worse than being cold. Driving an open cab car. No windshields in case you didn't notice, so it will be chilly. Get up, have a cup of coffee, get dressed quickly. We gotta get over staging by like 7 a.m. And first car qualifies at 8. We get a 30-mile lap. At 8, everyone runs that, then they check our times and re-rack, as they say. So you start based on the qualifying no matter what class. So we start next to a trophy truck tomorrow. And then we go 3 laps, 84 miles each. Got a strategy. We'll probably pit somewhere in the middle and see how that works out for us. Hopefully things kind of even out. The dust is really, really bad. It's been just kind of hanging, watching the race this morning. It was really, really, really dusty. No wind. Breeze kicked up tonight, so that was good. Hopefully that kind of holds tomorrow. I just want to get all this laid out and crawl in bed and get a good night's rest. Comes quick and early, and I want to be well rested so that you got to make decisions on the fly and quick. So I like to be in bed early. We just got this drinker system. It's called Fluid Logic. It's pretty rad. It's like a hydro flask, so it stays really, really cold if you want it ice cold. And it all pumps through our helmet. So it's nice. It eliminates having to have a Camelback that just gets warm. There's only a couple bottles. So starting in the back for qualifying is a bummer. So I'm interested to see how our time was, kind of know how the pace is going to be, if that's good, right in the middle, right where I want to be, or what. So we'll find out. I did have some dust. I had to pass a couple guys. They didn't hang me up too bad, but it definitely cost me a couple seconds for sure. But all in all, it felt like a decent run. It was clean. I mean, we're here. There's a couple guys out there on the lid, so we get to make the main race.
The dust does hang. If you're following somebody immediately, the dust will hang for a little bit. But we do have a breeze today, unlike yesterday, so we're definitely thankful for that. But looking forward to it. It is a rough course. It's a lot rougher than pre-running, so I think this is definitely going to be a race of attrition.
Never beat, I've been down and I reappear. You got some money on the line, you better put it here.
So hopefully Jason will be coming through here pretty soon. We're clocking the first 6100 and the second 6100 so that we could tell Jason how far ahead and behind he is on those two trucks, and then we'll clock the guy that's behind him, so he knows where he stands and he can continue to push it. .701 behind the leader. 7 minutes behind the leader of 6100. He was 7 minutes behind the leader, so he's doing really good. He's got a good pace going, and the truck looked really good coming through. So hopefully he keeps it up, and we'll find out more once he goes through remote pit.
Last lap he did it in 1 hour 31 minutes, and right now he's going to be 1 hour and about 31 minutes, almost exactly the same time. You got a spec truck 2 minutes in front of you, and right now your back door is clear.
10 minutes behind the leader. That's the only thing we got.
All we have is 10 minutes behind the leader.
Copy, thank you.
Copy.
I'm glad that is over. How about that?
So what's the outcome?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what, we used up all those iBox springs today. Oh man, it's so square. Just boom, 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 boom. Like, wow. That was a Rage at the River 250 miles.
Yeah.
Like all day, just that was so gnarly.
That's how it looked.
That's how I felt. I was like, thank God, there's only 3 laps.
Yeah, it was good enough for me to stay. I was going to leave after the second one. I was like, I got to stay and see who finishes.
Never beat, I've been down and I reappear. You got some money on
What an afternoon you guys had out there. What was it like for you?
Yeah, that was just a crazy pace. These guys running as hard as they could, and just stoked to get this iBox truck up here, and just, you know, it was for us a clean day, just missed the pace a little bit, I guess. You know, we did with the dust was gnarly, the rocks. I mean, that was a hammer down pace all day, so, you know, we're stoked, we'll take it, we'll learn, and go from there.
Even though this thing was a couple hundred miles, it almost felt like a sprint race as compared to going into a 500-mile race or a 1,000-mile or even a 400.
Oh, from the qualifying, I mean, we qualified in the back, we were last, so we had a short gap to start the race, so it was just, the whole pace was qualifying all day long. Finished, you know, had 5 minutes to get ready, and then we were just right back in the race, so, you know, we were qualifying pinned all day, it was crazy, but a great group of guys that are up front, and, you know, look forward to the next one.
Talk about some of the people behind the scenes that got you here.
Yeah, just IBOC, FK rod ends, and Maximo oils. Brady here preps a great truck. Super stoked to have him riding with me. Called the shots all day. The guys in the pits, my family, everything. Just, it was a great day. Stoked we didn't have to turn on the KC lights. It was getting close, so here we are.
Nice job, guys. Congratulations, 5th in class. Not a bad Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, love it. Thank you.
Jason Coleman, everybody. 5th in T2.
I'm on the way.
Yeah, that was awesome, though. I mean, one thing I could speak to being a video guy is, do more of that, right? Like, let people in. It's the Jerry Maguire thing of, if we don't let people in, they're not going to love us, right? They're not going to know who our characters are or what we're going through. So,
Maybe turn the mic down.
If any athlete can do that, it'd be awesome.
Matt, to your point, and I know you're a UFC guy. I mean, I've tried to take from the UFC stuff of just, dude, well, every time you watch a pre-fight show and you start talking, like, you think this guy's, you don't like him, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, this dude's a family guy, or this guy, we got this in common. Like, we have helmets on as racers. Like, we don't take them off, just like a football player or whatever. So, the more that we, like you say, if you can get behind and tell that story, and we can make a connection with those fans, which then obviously ties to our brands with, I want to be a brand ambassador for be it IBOC or BFG or whoever, like, that we can have that connection with them, and then they're loyal to us and our partners. Like, it's huge. And I think you do a great job of it in the way that you put your content together with the MIT 400. And, as me, as a guy who's trying to do marketing, that is, I hunger for it, with promoters like yourself.
No, I appreciate that. And speaking to the UFC content, the build-up content, they've done a really good job of character development. And that's, I think, the other key component to you and your relationship between IBOC is that, I want racers to understand that there is no silver bullet, right? Like, for every brand that wants a BJ Baldwin, they also want a Jason Coleman, right? So it's really about getting to know each other, relationships. And, this type of content is really important because from that piece of content, you get a really good look into not just racing, but who Jason Coleman is, right? So you're like, wow, okay, cool. This is a likable guy. He's competitive. Like, you start learning about the character, and, it goes back to whatever 50 plus years of NFL films. That's why we know who the NFL players are, is because they told us, right? So
the stories,
we have to do the same thing.
All about the stories.
From our point of view, we want somebody that's relatable. We want guys who are going out racing at weekends or whatever they do once a month. We go, yeah, I can do this, and that guy's done it, and he speaks to people. So you want the human side. I completely agree with that.
That's a really, really valid point. Hey, Julian, while you're on, we're going to wrap this up. Any speaker, any panelists that's still on, anybody that contributed, any final words of advice to racers watching this, and many thoughts for next year, 2023, what people might want to anticipate or prepare for? Is there anything that we left out that you'd recommend? I'll start with Julian, and then Matt, I'm going to cue you up next. You're second.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about, Jason said he kept trying and trying. And I think perseverance obviously is the right thing. Whether he was bouncing around our sales team before he got to the marketing team, I don't know. And I apologize, Jason, if you spent a lot of time trying to get on with the right thing. But that happens. I mean, some decks come across your deck. But if they're not written properly or they're not presented properly, then they're never going to, they're going to get the no, it's not going to go any further. But a professional, not even professional, a well-presented deck and perseverance will always work. And it's and also not just having your hand out. That's the one thing that I struggle with when somebody comes to me and says, I've got that, I want. No, tell me what you can give me, and then I'll tell you how we can work with you. And I think that's important.
Right on. Thank you. I agree. We haven't talked much about perseverance, but that is key. And you have to be able to accept rejection, and you get 99 no's for every yes. So yes, thanks, Julian. Matt, what are you thinking?
And don't be pissed off when you get rejected. Come and next time you come back to us, don't be nasty and angry. Just be polite.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, it's content. I think that once you decide that you want to be a sponsored racer, you're creating a business, and you have to look at it as now, like I'll use Jason as an example because we've had multiple conversations. He could have been like Jason Coleman, the guy, who goes and races and, his company pays for it and so on, but he chose to cross that threshold. Once you cross that threshold, you have to make investments into yourself as a business. And, part of making a brand investment is content. And like he was speaking to earlier, even how his deck looks, his website, his social media, everything. Now if you want money, if you want support, you have to start acting like, a real professional business, and investing in content is critical, so I'm glad to see Jason's doing it, that he's having success. I hope more people do it, because that's really the strength of our culture in off-road racing in particular, is the force multiplier of the athletes crew, the athletes fans, all the cow who pretends he's Jason Coleman. Like, those are the guys we want to reach, and this type of content is our way to reach them, whether it's around an event or even just the other 360 days here of getting ready and for event practicing and prepping.
If I can tack on,
go ahead, Ted.
Tack on there, Matt, is we're very much in the similar biz here of content is king, right? And I would just like to add that while big race budgets are fantastic, you have the tool in your pocket that can film some really creative stuff. So if you are, we at King of the Hammers, we have our Everyman Challenge class that are budget racers, and you can get out there and create great content with just your phone and your brother or your sister that can help you do it. So focus on that. And I agree with Matt of like creating it into a business and treating it as such to deliver on that. But you don't have to have an amazing Jason Coleman truck. You can do it in beater Jeep.
Thanks, Ted. Go ahead, George.
Well, we had a couple questions or a couple comments come through that I thought were pretty important, Alex, and those were most of the connection that the audience or the people that are on the call are looking at is they're connected to the stories. Jason did a very good job in that video of telling a story. So Matt and Jillian and everybody, Ted, had all said content is king. Crappy content is not king. Telling a good story, I feel like, is a lot of what they're talking about as being king.
Right, and I don't know what you guys saw, but the video on our end, it didn't render very well through Zoom. Apparently, we don't have a Zoom account that plays high-quality videos, super good. The sound was off from what I saw. We will post the link with the actual video, and it's fantastic. Oh, she already did. All right, it's already there. And in the recording of this, we'll put the real video, so in the future, as people watch this, it will be clean. I apologize for that. We didn't know. That was one of the tech bugs that we didn't realize. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, George, just to back you up, 100% agree. I think it's about the story quality, right? So one thing we always stress to people, to athletes and racers is, don't fall into the copycat syndrome. Like, let BJ Baldwin be BJ Baldwin. Don't try and pretend that that's who you are. Be yourself and find your audience. It's again that adage of the Jerry Maguire story of like, let people in and let them love you. You're going to find your audience. And in many cases, like the Robbie Wood story that I used earlier, we quickly realized that, here's this guy who was, at the time, he was not winning, but he had far more appeal than the top guys. So once we started getting his storytelling and telling people, his narrative, all of a sudden, he had more fans than the guys who were winning the races, right? Because he was, to the point of Julian, he was more relatable. So just don't be afraid to be yourself. There's more than one character that appeals to different demographics, and it's not all one narrative.
Right on. Do we still have Kevin on the call? or maybe I can't see the
I am
screen.
here.
I don't see. Yes. All right. Any last words of advice?
No, I thought, I agree on the storytelling. I mean, whether I go back to, and again, Alex, we went back in the off-road world of moving all our content to, at the time, an HD channel that was remote for the purpose of storytelling. And it helped the series greatly go through in a competitive environment. To this day, even when we're on streaming video, it's all about keeping people engaged, and you got to tell stories and personalities. And I agree that racers have helmets on. You got to take the helmet off. Let people get a personality behind you. I mean, NASCAR. It's no secret that people rallied around NASCAR because they rallied around the driver. And now that there's so much turnover in drivers, you don't see as much of that connection anymore. Everybody's trying to build connections with drivers, and the best place to start is from the driver himself. Build the connection with the fans. Like I said, I've noticed both Bryce and Rico Brew have really done tremendous jobs of building followers, becoming Instagram stars, and that connection and building that the numbers of people following them lets them tell their story better, further, engage people, and that's what's going to ring the bell at the end of the day for sponsors.
Right on. Thanks, Kevin. Let's go backwards. Dan or Marty, are you guys still on the call? And we have people calling in literally from all over the world. Joe Parsons called in from Poland. We have East Coast, West Coast. Megan had to depart. She's now taking care of Henry. So I don't know who has stayed on. They're off? Okay.
Alex, I got one more point if I could.
Yeah, go for it, Jason.
One thing on the persistence. So I've been creating content, doing different things in racing for many, many years. It's not all about what you do today. It's just a legacy. So, someone sees your content and they start to know your name, and it takes time and they build. But one of the coolest things ever was back in my buggy racing days, I was trying to get on with FK rod ends, and when I sent them the deck for the truck, they remembered me. They remembered I had a good deck. At the time, they weren't really into the buggy thing, but they loved the truck idea. And I really got an email back saying, hey, I know you. I remember your deck from 4 years ago. Love to have you on the team. Wanted you then, but just it wasn't, the truck thing. So sometimes it might not work today, but you keep trying and it comes around, and all of a sudden they may not forget you. So persistence and just putting a good image out there will pay off eventually.
That is true. And when I was with Lucas Oil, I actually did a very large deal with Polaris one year. It took 5 years to get to that point. I solicited Polaris, and I went through a lot of different marketing directors, probably 4 or 5 of them rotated through until I finally met the right person, and he understood, and being persistent. And by then I knew the brand quite well, so I knew how our assets at Lucas could better serve Polaris. So they were promoting the Razors and the side-by-sides, Rangers at the time. And it ended up being a very large deal for both companies, and good visibility. We used a lot of Rangers at the track, and it took 5 years. After 3 years, I wanted to quit, but I didn't. I just kept it up. So George and Tammy, why don't you guys tell me who's still on?
Well, I would just like to, it looks like some of the people have dropped off, and we have a list here, but I would just like to invite any of the speakers to give any final last words. If you were a speaker, go ahead and address the audience.
One of the things that you said, Alex, was where is 2023 going, or where are we going to end up at 2023? I think from a motorsport point of view, I think it would just keep going. I mean, we've had a very strong last 2.5 years, and I think that will keep going. Maybe not at the crazy growth that we've seen, but people will still want to get out. They're still racing. They still want to do it from grassroots to the top of the range. I think my personal view on the business side of it, the aftermarket selling side, is we've had a lot of cash injected into the economy over the last 18 months. That has to end. But when we get to the end of 2023 and look back to 2019, I think that the graph will still be going up, but we will have had this bell jar effect. We're still going to be up there.
Interesting.
But we won't have this massive 25-30% that we've had year on year. It will slow down, and if you take the average, it will be whatever it is. And if I had a crystal ball, I would be a multi-millionaire by now. I'm not sitting here at this desk talking to you lot.
Excellent.
There we go. So that's my view on where we're going to go by the end of 23.
Nice. Thank you, Julian.
Okay. Well, if there's nobody else that would like to chime in, we're going to let Alex get us out of here, man. What a great job from everybody.
I think I just want to close to the racers who are looking at and watching this and looking for sponsors that the message is it's possible. It's very possible. You can do it. You can form new relationships and get sponsors, but you have to understand what those companies value and find that value or create that value for them. It's not about exposure. It's not about options 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, gold, silver, bronze. You know, pick your level here that's of sponsoring me. It's not about you. Sponsorship is about the company. It's about what can you do for the brand to help increase their sales or increase their brand equity or provide B2B relationships and opportunities for them. So think like a marketing director. Think like a salesperson for the brand and put yourself in those shoes and create value using some of the tools and techniques and tricks and tips and things that we learned on the call today from all the different speakers. And everybody who's on the call, you will have access to this recording. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you for having faith. Thank you for spending 6 hours with us, or 7. That was a long time. It's long for all of us, me too. And if you have any questions, we'll leave the chat room open for a few minutes, and I'll stay on the call if you guys want to chat one-on-one. I will also make a transcript of all the chat room questions and send that out, and then we'll send any relevant links that people talked about. So thank you once again on behalf of George Hamill, Megan Meyer, myself, Alex Stryler. Thank you very much for attending the very first ever virtual 2022 Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. See you.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care.
Great job, Mr. Stryler. I'll give you a call later. Hey there, Timmy.
Thank you, Tom Kelly. Wow, we're honored to. This is the CFO of Monster Energy.
And now I can't hear you. I went live and now I can't hear you. So.
Oh, you know what? My microphone was off. That's why.
Yeah, there you go. Now I can hear you.
I recognize that voice. Man, you should have joined us for the ROI call.
You know what? I came in around 1 o'clock, but it was fascinating the last 3 or 4 hours. So, and I'm glad the fact is that you've got it able to record it. So I'll go back in and see the beginning and up till 1 o'clock. So,
awesome.
Good job, everyone.
Well, thank you.
And you've
Guys,
got a great
that's the CFO of Monster Energy. He's complimenting us right now. So this is a big one. Thank you, Tom.
And you've got a great assistant to your right. To your right.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah. She did the video. That was her only
Yeah.
job. The only.
Good job. Good job. So I'll catch up to you. I'll give you my feedback later. But yeah, it was very, very interesting. Good to hear.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Say hi to Kathy.
Thanks. Will do. Bye, Tammy.
All right. See you.